Chapter 1023. The darkness was like fog. Shenyuan Wuxiang's virtual doppelganger stood quietly in the darkness for a long time. Time might be a wrong concept here. There was chaos in the extreme darkness, and countless pictures kept flashing faintly. The blurred darkness seemed to be the eternal theme. There was no up or down, no left or right, no front or back, and no time. There were only blurred pictures flashing randomly in the darkness of nothingness. Shenyuan Wuxiang was motionless. From his point of view, this was the deepest part of Wang Tianzong's consciousness. The countless flashing pictures in the darkness were Wang Tianzong's dreams or memories. They were the most secret corners of his heart. The longer Shenyuan Wuxiang stood here, the more pictures he saw in the darkness. However, the pictures hidden in the darkness were too vague. Even if he saw them, it was difficult to capture any useful information. Moreover, these pictures were a collection of memories and dreams. Even if he captured something, it was difficult to tell whether it was real or not. The vast darkness was boundless. It seemed to be infinitely big, but also infinitely small. Shenyuan Wuxiang slowly reached out his hand. The virtual doppelganger, which was completely composed of data and spirit, raised his finger and gently tapped the surrounding darkness. A pure and bright light with strong vitality was slowly released from his fingertips. The darkness lit up slightly. Almost as soon as the darkness lit up, in the medical room of Beihai prison outside, Wang Tianzong's brainwave frequency began to soar again. In an instant, it surpassed the previous level. Although it was not close to the latest peak and reached the height of sobriety, it was close to the peak data. The light continued to spread in the darkness. Shenyuan Wuxiang's eyes suddenly lit up. Pieces of pure light rushed out from behind him and turned into countless incomprehensible phantoms. The surrounding darkness surged wildly. Consciousness was something that existed but was extremely illusory. In the darkness deep in Wang Tianzong's consciousness, with the surging of countless lights, a strong and indescribable vitality began to spread. Light footsteps suddenly sounded in the silent darkness. Shenyuan Wuxiang did not move. The depths of consciousness were all illusory, so there was naturally no so-called space. This infinitely big and infinitely small darkness was just a manifestation constructed by Shenyuan Wuxiang. The so-called footsteps were the illusion of Wang Tianzong's consciousness. All the darkness surged and gathered, and finally turned into a figure. The surrounding space seemed to turn gray at this moment. Wang Tianzong's figure became clearer and clearer. He stood in front of Shenyuan Wuxiang with his eyes closed, showing neither sadness nor joy. As the darkness receded, the countless chaotic images in the darkness also disappeared. Shenyuan Wuxiang's eyes suddenly lit up. It was like an instinctive greed. He didn't like men, but at this moment, Wang Tianzong, whose consciousness was in a state of chaos, did have an almost fatal attraction to him. This is the only one in hundreds of years who has broken through the so-called supreme level. In any case, he deserved to be called a hero. Shenyuan Wuxiang was a virtual doppelganger. In this space, if he turned his consciousness into data and invaded and occupied the depths of Wang Tianzong's consciousness, Wang Tianzong would undoubtedly become Shenyuan Wuxiang's puppet in the shortest time, and the entire Wang family of Beihai would become his plaything. Wang Tianzong's willpower was extremely firm. It was not easy for him to get over this matter, but he was different from Qin Weibai after all. It was not too difficult for Shenyuan Wuxiang to invade Wang Tianzong. If he could have such a puppet. His eyes kept flashing. At that moment, countless thoughts seemed to appear in his mind, but they were all suppressed in the end. It's really a good opportunity. Tut, tut, but I'm not an ungrateful villain. She saved me once. Today, I'll save you once. It can be considered that I've repaid the karma. Muttering to himself, Shenyuan Wuxiang shook his head with some pity and regret. In the gray darkness, he flicked his fingers gently. A lot of pure light, as soft as water, slowly surrounded Wang Tianzong's body. Wang Tianzong, who had no sadness or joy, like a dead thing, almost became vivid in an instant, with a trace of vitality. Shenyuan Wuxiang watched this scene quietly. His body slowly straightened up, and his round, harmless and comical face calmed down. At this moment, he was not so serious or dignified, but his every move and look became extremely formal. He was different from Li Tianlan. Emperor Dong's palace was really one of his own people. Shenyuan Wuxiang could be cheeky, play the fool, and act unscrupulously. He could do whatever he wanted. The so-called dignity and face were not for his own people. But in front of Wang Tianzong, he represented more than himself. Wang Tianzong's eyes moved. The next moment, the light faded, and the gray darkness stabilized. Wang Tianzong opened his eyes. With pure confusion in his eyes, he looked at Shenyuan Wushang, who was standing in front of him, and could not come back to his senses for a while. Shenyuan Wushang looked at him and did not speak. The two sides looked at each other quietly for a long time. "Who are you?" The blankness in Wang Tianzong's eyes gradually faded, but deeper and deeper doubts emerged in his eyes. He looked at the dark space around him and then looked at Shenyuan Wushang. He took the initiative to break the silence. The cloister of time and space, the ninth prince of the old city, Saint Shenyuan Wushang. Shenyuan Wushang's expression was calm, and his tone was slow. He made a very formal self-introduction. Wang Tianzong looked confused. What was the cloister of time and space? What the hell was the old city? The ninth prince? How fertile he was. Saint. Wang Tianzong shook his head hard and seemed to catch the key point. Saint. Saint of Samsara Palace? When Saint revealed his identity, Wang Tianzong had been in a coma. But Di Jiang had fought with Saint, so he also speculated Saint's identity. The fat man in front of him was obviously not Wei Kunlun of Mount Shu. You mean Wei Kunlun? Saint is just his code name. The two saints don't mean the same thing. Shenyuan Wushang said lightly, "Do you remember what happened just now?" Just now, Wang Tianzong frowned. "It seems that I had a dream. It seems that... Li Tianlon. I don't remember." Even when he was just most conscious, he was still far from truly waking up. In this era, Wang Tianzong, who was in a coma, was currently the most qualified person to represent the word supreme. Li Tianlon was indeed very strong now, but if Wang Tianzong was completely awake, even if it was a sword chi doppelganger, Li Tianlon would not be able to block it. There was no possibility of blocking it at all. Shenyuan Wushang nodded and did not speak. "Beihai, how is it?" "My family." Wang Tianzong hesitated and suddenly spoke. He didn't ask where he was, nor did he ask what was going on. When he saw Shenyuan Wushang, he instinctively asked about the other party's identity and received an inexplicable answer. When he was fully conscious, the first thing he asked was North Sea, which was his family. All the questions, including Shenyuan Wushang's identity and his own state, seemed to be irrelevant in his mind. What he cared about most was his family and Beihai. Shenyuan Wushang was a little emotional, and his eyes became complicated. There was pity and regret. Without saying anything, Shenyuan Wushang just waved his hand casually. In the dark space, countless data appeared out of thin air. The first thing that appeared in front of Wang Tianzong was a pile of documents composed of data. Wang Tianzong was confused, but he did not say anything. He looked at them seriously. He quickly scanned the documents and finally fell on the signature at the end of the documents. The signature was Li Huaqing. Then there was the second document. The main content of the document was some personnel transfers in Jianghu state. Some of the personnel transfers in Huiting and Wuyue were very eye-catching. The signature of the document was still Li Huaqing. Wang Tianzong watched silently, and his expression became calmer and calmer. The third document was a regulation notice issued by the cabinet of Jianghu state. It was aimed at many fields. Chen Fengqing's signature appeared on the document. There were more and more documents composed of data. Li Huaqing, Chen Fengqing, and the names of the directors of Jianghu state appeared one after another. Wang Tianzong did not speak, just watched quietly. He was so familiar with these documents. Although he did not read them carefully, he already knew the direction of these documents after they were thoroughly executed. Just from these documents, he could imagine what kind of storm the Wang family of Beihai was going through when he was in a coma. The documents composed of data were formed faster and faster. The date of the documents was getting closer and closer. The signatures of the documents began to become more and more monotonous. Li Huaqing's name gradually decreased, as if he was deliberately reducing the traces of his existence. On the other hand, Chen Fengqing's signature began to increase. In the past 3 days, Chen Fengqing had signed a total of more than 40 documents marked as top secret. That's about it. Shenyuan Wushang copied all the documents copied from the confidential database of Jianghu state here. Then he waved his hand, and all the documents turned into flying dust in an instant. The flying dust kept combining, and the huge amount of data formed dynamic pictures one after another. There was a strange silence. At this time, no one knew what was going on in East Island. There was a dead silence in Autumn Water and Tongtian. At this time, Kanglan was full of smoke, and Empress City was in a mess. The pictures of all the cities in Beihai flashed in front of Wang Tianzong's eyes, and then they fixed on Mount Dibing. Not the current Mount Dibing, but the previous Mount Dibing. It was like the previous battle video. From the moment Wang Xiaoyao fought with Wang Xiaoyao, Tianya Bright Moon's saber, one sword of samsara, shattering land, law of kendo, and the fall of the invincible realm. The pictures flashed quickly. The breath of the sea, and the bright moon rose from the sea. Wuyo hung high in the sky. Wang Tianzong saw several of his own figures besieging Li Tianlan. Then he saw the picture in his dream that he had almost forgotten. The 6 paths of reincarnation sword collided with the crazy and twisted sword light. It was like countless half-step invincible realm experts had a fierce confrontation with the real chosen one. Wang Tianzong watched his sword energy doppelganger disappear. Wuyo was still hanging high in the sky. Li Tianlan knelt on one knee in the air. Countless white fog completely covered his body, but a lot of blood still flowed out from every corner of Li Tianlan's body, even under the protection of the dragon vein. It was a shocking sight. The picture gradually quieted down, but it still continued. The passage of time seemed to be an illusion. He read dozens of documents here, but it only took a few seconds in the outside world. Obviously, this was the picture of Mount Dibing now. No, there was no Mount Dibing anymore. The whole Mount Dibing had been completely razed to the ground in the collision just now. Now what appeared in front of Wang Tianzong was a ruin. Wang Tianzong watched all this quietly without saying a word. In the medical room of Beihai, Wang Tianzong, whose brain waves kept soaring, seemed to be in a completely unconscious state. He lay in the nutrition chamber, and his fingers hidden in the nutrition liquid trembled slightly without warning. There was a sudden gust of wind in the huge medical room. In an instant, the extremely sharp sword energy spread wildly throughout the Beihai prison. The sword energy rushed out of the prison and boiled in the sea. Once again, there was a huge and somewhat exaggerated whirlpool on the surface of Beihai. The overwhelming sword energy rushed to the sky from the whirlpool without stopping for a moment. Wuyo, who was hanging high in the sky, paused slightly. The next moment, the sky was torn apart. The sword energy was mighty, filling the sky and covering the sun and the moon. The morning sun and the bright moon were instantly suppressed by the sword energy all over the sky. Countless sword energy rushed toward the sea, almost out of control. The light of the sun and the moon was completely dim. Between heaven and earth, there was only pure sword light. The sword light whistled and traveled 10,000 meters in an instant. The sword energy condensed in one place directly appeared on the stage of Formidable Person, and turned into a sword energy doppelganger that was countless times stronger than before. Wang Tianzong looked at Li Tianlan in the air quietly. The sword energy flowed in his eyes, and he narrowed his eyes slightly. Crack! Li Tianlan's body finally moved. With the movement of his body, countless bones in his body seemed to bear a great load. Li Tianlan, who was crackling all over, slowly stood up. The white fog was getting thicker. There was more and more blood on Li Tianlan's body. He held Shenyuan Feng in his hand and looked at Wang Tianzong on the stage of Formidable Person. The corners of his mouth slowly raised, revealing a ferocious sneer. In the depths of his consciousness, Shenyuan Wushang didn't seem to feel the changes in the outside world at all. He just looked at Wang Tianzong quietly and said meaningfully, "What's your plan?" The majestic sword energy continued to spread between heaven and earth. Wang Tianzong was silent for a moment and said slowly, "I don't feel the aura of Jiang Shangyu and Li Kuangtu." After a pause he continued, "Wuyo, let me down." At this time, his sword energy and Wuyo's energy were completely one. When his consciousness fell into the trough, Wuyo could borrow his sword intent and scrupulously. At this time, his consciousness was restored, so he could also borrow Wuyo's energy and scrupulously. As for himself, for more than 2 years, the body of War God had constantly strengthened his body, but the sword energy of the eternal sword still existed in his body. Although it was a little weaker, it was still destroying his body tirelessly. All his sword energy was fighting against the sword intent in his body. Without Wuyo's energy, he wouldn't even be qualified to make a move. But now Wuyo was full of energy, and his consciousness was clear. At least on Mount Dibbing, compared to the Dark World, even if Wang Tianzong could only use a clone of sword energy, he was still the real supreme existence. He originally had high hopes for Wuyo, but no one had expected that at the moment when Wuyo merged with his sword intent, Wuyo actually regarded Li Tianlan as the strongest threat and even let go of Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu at all costs. So, Shenyuan Wushang smiled and said, "You won't make the same choice as Wuyo?" "I have no choice now," Wang Tianzong said calmly. "Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu are gone. Li Tianlan is the only target. He is the current ally of Beihai." Shenyuan Wushang narrowed his eyes. "So before I recover, I won't kill him. Beihai needs him for the time being. But I want Shenyuan Feng," Wang Tianzong said slowly. "Shenyuan Feng." Shenyuan Wushang muttered to himself and laughed. His original calmness gradually began to change, and there was a trace of sharpness in his whole body. "Do you deserve it?" Wang Tianzong was not angry. His clone of sword energy was on the platform of formidable person. Even if his consciousness disappeared again, or even if he died, he could make a move at the moment before death. Shenyuan Wushang couldn't stop him. No one could stop him. He said that he wouldn't kill Li Tianlan, but he had already left some leeway. If Shenyuan Wushang wanted to kill him, Wang Tianzong could also kill Li Tianlan with one move before death. At that time, Shenyuan Feng would still belong to Beihai, and Wuyo, who had merged with Shenyuan Feng, would be enough to fight against Shenyuan Wushang. If it's your ancestor, it's almost the same, but he doesn't need a divine weapon anymore. Shenyuan Wushang said slowly, "Shenyuan Feng belongs to my elder brother. To be exact, it belongs to the old city. No one will say anything if it's in my elder brother's hands. But if it's in your hands, I don't know what will happen in the future. Do you want to know the current result?" "Tell me about it." Wang Tianzong's tone was flat. "I have 3 virtual clones. One is in East Island, one is in Jianghu State, and one is here. I can control the weapon system of East Island. Naturally, I can also control the weapon systems of Jianghu State and Beihai. As long as you dare to do it, the entire Beihai will completely sink to the bottom of the sea within a minute. Do you believe me?" Shenyuan Wushang said with a smile, "I do owe your family a favor, so I'm willing to help you today, but you can't touch our fundamental interests. Believe me, no one wants to go to war with the old city, not even your family." "A threat?" Wang Tianzong raised his eyebrows. "It's just a fact. If you dare to rob our things and kill our people, then there will be a war." "A war with whom?" Wang Tianzong suddenly asked. As long as he dared to do it, according to Shenyuan Wushang, the entire Wang family of Beihai would be completely destroyed. In that case, how could there be a war? Shenyuan Wushang's mouth moved, but he didn't speak. Wang Tianzong also fell silent. "Stop it," Shenyuan Wushang said slowly. On the stage of formidable person, Wang Tianzong's sword chi clone suddenly raised his palm. Boundless clear light suddenly bloomed. The sword energy, as vast as the sea, suddenly pressed down. The sword energy completely shrouded the ruins of Mount Dibbing. Countless sword energy completely bypassed Li Tianlan when they passed by him and rushed to Mount Dibbing. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows in surprise. He looked in the direction of Mount Dibbing. On Mount Dibbing, the silent sword chi doppelganger nodded at Li Tianlan. The bright moon hovered in the sky. Countless silver lights fell on the stage of formidable person. Wang Tianzong's figure bathed in the clear light of the sword energy all over the sky. His figure became more and more solid, and finally turned into a statue of sword energy standing beside the stone of formidable person. From this day on, the bright moon in the sky of Beihai would always be there, day or night. Where the bright moon existed, Wang Tianzong's sword chi clone would always be there, regardless of wind or snow. Li Tianlan took a deep look at Wang Tianzong. In this state, Wang Tianzong's sword chi clone could not leave Mount Dibbing. But as long as this clone was still there, the Wang family of Beihai would become extremely safe again. The sky was completely bright. In the morning sun, Li Tianlan, who was bleeding all over, took a deep breath and looked up at the sky. Wisps of rain fell without warning in the morning sun, penetrated the bright moon, penetrated the sword energy, and sprinkled on Mount Dibbing. The sun and the moon were in the sky, and the drizzle continued. This was a picture that many people found extremely difficult to understand. Li Tianlan looked at all this in a daze. The white fog around him surged out crazily and kept drifting in the drizzle. The wounds on his body began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the depths of his consciousness, Shenyuan Wuxiang laughed. Wise choice. He looked at Wang Tianzong and whispered, "In this case, I also want to give you a gift. I hope you like it." His figure disappeared in the darkness. In the medical room, Wang Tianzong's brainwaves fell back, and his sword chi clone was completely stable. It began to rain. The continuous rain healed Li Tianlan's wounds and fell to the ground. Bits of green appeared on the ruins of Mount Dibing. The green spread rapidly under the rain. The extremely strong vitality suddenly burst out. Large flowers and green trees were constantly growing on Mount Dibing in the rain. They were thriving. In the morning light, everything began to end, and only the end was left. The helicopter of East Island had taken off and returned. Shenyuan Wuxiang stretched and whispered, "It's over." Saint sat beside him and watched all this through the screen, stunned. He couldn't come back to his senses for a while. Wang Tianzong, Xing Tian's voice sounded beside Shenyuan Wuxiang. Very strong. Those who can reach the limits of kendo and martial arts at this juncture are always extraordinary. Shenyuan Wuxiang smiled, feeling a little regretful and pitiful. Young master, maybe? Xing Tian hesitated. Maybe we can take him back? Why bother? Shenyuan Wuxiang's glasses flashed. Through the endless distance. He quietly looked at the sword chi clone beside the stone of formidable person. Shenyuan Wuxiang smiled softly. Even if he really wants to leave, his origin has doomed him to belong to the imperial palace or the war god realm. It has little to do with us. Besides, after a pause, Shenyuan Wuxiang continued, he doesn't care about martial arts anymore. Chapter 1024. Li Tianlan quietly bathed in the rain in the air. The wind and snow in Beihai had stopped when the sun rose, but the rain in the air became more and more dense. It moistened everything silently. But the ruins of Mount Dibing were changing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Flowers, grass and trees. The vitality was vast, and the messy ruins were constantly glowing with vitality under the nourishment of the rain. Li Tianlan's injury was also constantly recovering. No one knew how terrible Li Tianlan's injury was after fighting with Wang Tianzong's sword. At that moment, he drew the sword to the limit of his own ability. It was no exaggeration to say that it was a sword that was completely out of control. Li Tianlan's current limit was to twist the sword energy of the peak of the thundershocking realm to the limit and completely burst out. Such a blow was equivalent to countless experts at the peak of the thundershocking realm attacking at the same time. But in the face of Wang Tianzong's sword energy doppelganger, what Li Tianlan burst out in an instant was the sword energy of the half-step invincible realm. The same twisting frequency, the same extreme burst. The moment the sword energy appeared, Li Tianlan had already suffered irreversible damage. At that time, even if Wang Tianzong's consciousness was still not too clear, he was still conscious. The most direct result of the collision of the two sword energy was that Li Tianlan completely shattered Wang Tianzong's sword energy doppelganger, and extremely terrible internal injuries appeared on Li Tianlan. His body was almost on the verge of collapse. His internal organs were severely torn, his muscle fibers became loose, and his bones were shaking. Except for the battle in Heaven Capital, this could be said to be the most serious internal injury Li Tianlan had suffered since he entered the secular world. Even if he was in the dragon vein, he could not fully recover in a short time. With his injury just now, if he could leave Mount Dibing and carry the dragon vein, it would take at least 2 or 3 years to fully recover to the peak state. This also doomed him to not make any progress in 2 or 3 years. But now with the drizzle, his internal injuries were recovering at an unimaginable and incomprehensible speed. His broken internal organs recovered as he breathed. His muscles, bones, and every cell in his body seemed to be cheering. Countless wounds kept healing as the rain fell. In just a few minutes, although Li Tianlan was covered with blood, his injuries had recovered. White mist surged around him, and the vitality in the mist seemed to have become denser because of the rain. Li Tianlan stood silently in the air above Mount Dibing and kept silent for a long time. This life force was so familiar to him, yet so strange at the same time. Every drop of rain in the world seemed to be a kind of power similar to the dragon vein, but the intensity of vitality was countless times stronger than that of the dragon vein. The injuries in his body, which originally needed 2 or 3 years to recover under the nourishment of the dragon vein, were healed in a few minutes. The changes on Mount Dibbing at this time. All of this showed how powerful the rain was. But the most important thing was, what did this rain that had suddenly appeared without any warning mean? The rain continued to fall for nearly 5 minutes. When the rain stopped, the ruins of Mount Dibbing were almost completely shrouded in flowers and greenery. All the wounded on the mountain had recovered. Xianxia was standing in front of the stage of Formidable Person, the only intact protected area, feeling all this silently. Everyone's heart was filled with disbelief and many doubts, but they didn't know who to ask. Li Tianlan's figure moved. He disappeared from the air, and when he reappeared, he was already in front of the stone of Formidable Person. Clap! His figure suddenly shook the moment he landed on the ground. His palm subconsciously patted the stone of Formidable Person, making a crisp sound. Now his internal injuries had indeed recovered, but his physical strength was little, which was also what puzzled Li Tianlan the most. He had the dragon vein, and its strong vitality could speed up the recovery of his injuries. It could also maintain his physical functions. In the state of battle, Li Tianlan, who had the dragon vein, could not be said to have endless physical strength, but he was not afraid of most battles of attrition. Unless he encountered the suppression of firepower like in Qiushui City, or the absolute outbreak of Wang Tianzong's sword qi doppelganger, his physical strength could be said to be absolutely abundant under normal conditions. The rain just now contained the kind of rainwater similar to the dragon vein, which helped him recover from his injuries, but could not restore his physical strength. Li Tianlan had no idea why. Li Tianlan took a few deep breaths and tried to stand up straight. Wang Xianxiao stood beside him, squinting and looking at Li Tianlan thoughtfully. Li Tianlan suddenly laughed. His voice was a little low, but with absolute coldness and sharpness. If you want to fight, now is a good opportunity. Think about it. Such an opportunity is really tempting. Now my physical strength is almost completely overdrawn. Do you want to have a try? Wang Xianxiao looked at him quietly. After more than a minute of silence, he smiled and shook his head. Now Beihai needs a living East Emperor as an ally. Before the current situation fundamentally changes, Beihai and Emperor Dong's palace will always be each other's natural allies on the bottom line. Li Tianlan did not say anything more. He slowly came to the sword qi doppelganger that had become a statue, and remained silent. In the sky of Beihai, the sun and the moon were in the same sky. The vast clear light shrouded Mount Dibbing, and wisps of sword qi constantly merged into the statue in front of him. The statue seemed to have lost all consciousness and was motionless. But Li Tianlan was very clear that from now on, as long as there was a slight situation in the outside world, this seemingly unconscious sword qi doppelganger could appear in any corner illuminated by the clear light of the moon at any time. A sword qi doppelganger of Wang Tianzong. It was ridiculous to say. At this moment, the strongest person in the dark world turned out to be this sword qi doppelganger in front of him. At least before Wuyo's energy was exhausted, this sword qi doppelganger was the strongest. Even in this state, Li Tianlan was no match for it. Li Tianlan vaguely knew how far he was from the so-called supreme realm of martial arts. Tonight's fight, he vaguely saw the huge gap in combat effectiveness. That gap seemed to be only half a step, but in fact, it was a completely different concept. The only thing Li Tianlan could be sure of was that the sword qi doppelganger that he completely tore apart was not the state of Wang Tianzong's consciousness. The doppelganger in front of him was the state of Wang Tianzong's consciousness. How strong would it be in this state? Li Tianlan was silent. Others might not know the answer, but Li Tianlan could draw a conclusion. If this doppelganger had been here for a long time, after his 3 prohibitions, the doppelganger would wake up. Jiang Shangyu Li Kuangtu, and even Li Tianlan himself. If the sword qi doppelganger in front of him completely broke out, the 3 of them would not even have the chance to walk out of Mount Dibbing alive. Wang Tianzong had been silent for 2 years. But to some extent, he had also entered a new realm. 2 years. The serious injury limited his body and his sword energy. But when his consciousness was active, his sword intent was constantly improving. The sword qi doppelganger now used Wuyo's energy. In other words, before Wuyo's energy was exhausted, the full destructive power of Wang Tianzong's sword qi doppelganger was even stronger than that of Wang Tianzong in Mormon's more than 2 years ago. It was vaguely close to the almost eternal sword at that time. Li Tianlan thought silently. Now if he wanted to fight against this sword chi doppelganger, he had no chance of winning, unless he waited for Wu You's energy to recover and used the prohibition again. Li Tianlan gently tidied up his black windbreaker. The windbreaker hung limply on Li Tianlan's body, looking listless. Large patches of golden patterns had all dimmed. Its energy had not been completely exhausted, but the remaining energy could only maintain its spirituality. It had no combat effectiveness at all. Li Tianlan was silent for a while and suddenly said, "I'm a little curious. At that time, at least from your standpoint, Wang Tianzong must have felt that he could kill me. So why didn't he do it?" Wang Xianxia hesitated for a moment and said, "Maybe he had the same consideration as me." "Maybe." Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. "This is just my father's sword chi doppelganger. My father's real body is too far away from here, and he is not in a good state now, so this sword chi doppelganger can't speak. Even if it can express something, it is Wu You's will. To be exact, the main consciousness of this doppelganger is still Wu You, but it is Wu You who is suppressed by my father's sword intent." Wang Xiangxiao smiled helplessly. "So, it can't be regarded as the sword emperor of Jianghu state now?" "Of course." Wang Xiangxiao nodded. Li Tianlan nodded. He looked at the statue and was silent for a long time. Then he said softly, "We will have a fight." Wang Xiangxiao's face changed slightly, but he did not speak. "But fortunately, we still have time now." He turned around and walked down the stairs, down the stage of formidable person. "What's your next plan?" Li Tianlan asked slowly. "Rebuild Mount Dibing." Wang Xiangxiao's tone was a little bitter. Mount Dibing, which had stood in Beihai for hundreds of years, had a bad fate in recent years. First, it was swept by Li Tianlan and made a mess. Then, not long after, the mysterious expert, whose identity had not been found out and who seemed to have disappeared into thin air, directly split Mount Dibing with a sword. Now, after 2 years of peace, the entire Mount Dibing completely disappeared tonight, leaving only the stage of formidable person intact. It was impossible for the Wang family of Beihai to have no headquarters. It was imperative to rebuild Mount Dibing. "Congratulations." Wang Xiangxiao shook his head and drove all the messy thoughts out of his mind. He looked at Li Tianlan and said, "Right now, Li Tianlan really deserved this congratulation." Wang Xiangxiao had long known about the existence of Wu You. He also knew that Wu You could communicate with his father's sword intent and then form the strongest combat capability in the dark world. In the final battle in Beihai, he sent all the experts. It seemed that he pinned all his hopes on the firepower of Mount Dibing and Li Tianlan's combat capability. But in fact, Wang Xiangxiao had always been very confident. It turned out that everything Wang Xiangxiao expected did not disappoint him. He saw his father's sword chi doppelganger. He saw Jianghu and Li Guangtu fleeing in panic. The only thing he did not expect was that Li Tianlan had the power to directly crush his father's sword chi doppelganger without Wuxia. What made him most disappointed was that Wang Tianzong's sword chi doppelganger did not attack Li Tianlan. He won the final battle in Beihai, but the final plan directly failed. Wang Xiangxiao did not want Li Tianlan to die. As he said, at this stage, Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai were indeed allies at the bottom line. He wanted to see Li Tianlan alive. Wang Xiangxiao hoped that Li Tianlan was alive, but he also wanted Wuxia in Li Tianlan's hands. Wang Tianzong's sword chi doppelganger could completely take down Wuxia and let Li Tianlan go. Wu You's energy was still abundant, which meant that the sword chi doppelganger would not disappear in a short time. After getting Wuxia, even if Li Tianlan attacked, Mount Dibing would not be afraid of anything with this sword chi doppelganger. When Wu You and Wuxia merged, Wang Tianzong's sword chi doppelganger would be more stable. He might not be able to leave Mount Dibing, but Wang Xiangxiao also believed that he could enter the invincible realm in a few years. As long as he entered the invincible realm, with Wu You's cooperation, he also had the capital to stand at the peak of the dark world and no longer had to be afraid of Li Tianlan. But Wang Tianzong's sword chi doppelganger directly turned into a statue. Wuxia was still on Li Tianlan. The final battle in Beihai was over. Wang Xiangxiao did win, but Li Tianlan was the most worthy of congratulation at this time. Everything that happened tonight would continue to ferment in the shortest amount of time, and eventually evolve into a true storm. The 2 martial arts grandmasters of East Island, Yagyu and Tianhai Wuji, both died in Li Tianlan's hands. Jianghu, the new patriarch of the Jiang family of South America, melted in Wuyo's clear light. 3 invincible realm experts died, and the dark world was increasingly declining. For Emperor Dong's palace, this also meant the benefits that were big enough to expand their scale again. Now the most elite nightmare core of Emperor Dong's palace was already in East Island. Although there was no clear news, it was obvious that Li Tianlan was determined to get East Island. Both Saint and Hidden God, 2 invincible realm experts, were sent to East Island by Li Tianlan, which was enough to show Li Tianlan's determination. With the end of the final battle in Beihai and the news of the death of the 2 grandmasters in East Island, Emperor Dong's palace's strength in East Island would hardly encounter any so-called competitors. The Purgatory of Heaven capital might be one. But the Purgatory of Heaven capital had already been blocked by Li Tianlan's sword. No one knew how long this kind of blockade would last. Everyone in the Purgatory of Heaven capital might be waiting for Li Guangtu to go back and lift the blockade. But Li Guangtu was also seriously injured tonight. In his current state, whether he could lift the blockade or not was another matter. Even if Li Guangtu could do it, he, who had lost the initiative and was seriously injured, was not qualified to compete with Emperor Dong's palace for the Purgatory of Heaven capital. For the Purgatory of Heaven capital, the first thing they had to face now was that Emperor Dong's palace would devour their interests. The Jiang family of South America seemed to be far away from Emperor Dong's palace, but a fact that no one could ignore was in front of them. Previously, Lin Fengting was in America now. The headquarters of the Lin clan might still be able to maintain a detached and secluded posture, but Lin Fengting's presence was enough to build a bridge of cooperation between the Lin clan's American branch and Emperor Dong's palace. In this way, the Lin clan's American branch had a real strong support, and Emperor Dong's palace could also take advantage of the situation to extend its reach to America. Today in America, not only the Jiang family, but also the Heroes Club, Fantasy World, and other forces, large and small, could be conquered by Emperor Dong's palace. After tonight's battle, Wang Xiaoyao was seriously injured, and the underground force of Snow Country was bound to be turbulent. The Snow Dance Corps stationed in Wulon State was also Li Tianlan's direct force. Mochizuki and Song had not died. She was very close to the peak of the invincible realm. When she reconnected her arm and recovered from her injury to a certain extent, the Dark Knights could join hands with the Snow Dance Corps to sweep Snow Country and squeeze Wang Xiaoyao's living space. When the final battle in Beihai broke out, the whole dark world was not calm. The Holy Land was raided. 2 Heavenly King General and Duke of the Samsara Palace, who had been missing for a long time, reappeared. The forces of the Fantasy World of America and the Heroes Club were also attacking the secret base of the Jiang family of South America. There was chaos everywhere. It could be imagined that such chaos would not subside with the end of the final battle in Beihai. Instead, it would become more chaotic. Jiang Xiangyu, who had been exposed, naturally would not hide anymore. He saved more aid. Which meant that he still kept the power of Knights Templars. With the death of Tianhai Wuji, Yagyu, and Jiang Guochu, Jiang Xiangyu would definitely not give up the forces of these allies if he could intervene. Wang Xiaoyao was isolated and helpless, so he would also become Jiang Xiangyu's ally. Wang Xiaoyao also needed strength to rectify the forces left by his allies after their death. The wind was rising and the clouds were surging. A new era of chaos had completely emerged. There were self-protectors who tried to maintain their status, and there would also be speculators who kept making choices for a higher status. There were ambitious conquerors like Emperor Dong's palace, and there would also be people like Jiang Xiangyu who did not give up their evil intentions. It was a feast. The only pity was that it was difficult for the Wang family of Beihai to gain much from this feast. Wang Xiangxiao's eyes flickered, and there was obvious unwillingness and regret in the depths of his eyes. He said. What do you suggest? In this battle, Emperor Dong's palace had completely broadened the road ahead, and there was more than one road. Every road could be said to be a bright road. Absolute power, huge interests, and lofty status were almost at their fingertips. Emperor Dong's palace was rising rapidly. Under the sky without shadows, it seemed to be becoming a new shadow that was enough to cover everyone. Wang Xiangxiao was silent for a while and said softly, "There are many choices, but the first choice is to stabilize the internal situation. It's time to solve the problem of Jianghu State." Jianghu State. Chen Fangqing. This was the most important thing at present. It was so for Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai. The final battle of Beihai was not the end. At least on the issue of Chen Fangqing, there was still a possibility that Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai would work closely together. Beihai needed to overthrow Chen Fangqing to stabilize some disagreements within the Southeast group, re-stabilize the situation, and then lay dormant for a while. And Li Tianlan's new group also needed to get rid of Chen Fangqing, the stumbling block, and let the outline of the new group really appear in front of everyone. Chen Fangqing might struggle on his deathbed, but it was nothing to worry about. Tonight, the Wang family of Beihai could collect enough evidence in the smoke. Similarly, as Emperor Dong's palace entered East Island, Li Tianlan could also produce countless evidence of Chen Fangqing's cooperation with East Island in a very short time. Even if Li Tianlan couldn't produce it, so what? After occupying the dark world of East Island, such evidence didn't even need to be found by Emperor Dong's palace. If they needed any evidence, they could make it themselves. The final battle of Beihai was completely Chen Fangqing's last madness. His situation had already reached the point where he was deserted by his friends and family. With the failure of the final battle of Beihai, Chen Fangqing's front had completely lost all cover and was completely exposed to the artillery fire of Beihai and Emperor Dong's palace. Chen Fangqing, Li Tianlan said slowly, it's nothing to worry about. It's true, and we still have enough time. There is still nearly a year before the election. Enough for us to make a lot of arrangements. Wang Xianxia nodded. He thought about what benefits Beihai could get after Chen Fangqing fell. When he slowly relaxed, Li Tianlan's voice sounded again. About Wang Qinglei, you already have an internal opinion, don't you? The corner of Wang Xiangxiao's mouth twitched fiercely. He looked at the expressionless Li Tianlan and asked, what do you mean? Just a reminder. Li Tianlan said flatly. This man has the ambition of a wolf. It's too dangerous to occupy Wuxia. If you let him go further, believe me, it's definitely not a good thing for you. The final battle of Beihai will reveal the dagger. Now Wang Qinglei seems to be a member of the Southeast group, but with Chen Fangqing's fall, if Wang Qinglei goes further, not only will he occupy a place in the Southeast group, but he may even become the new leader of the Prince group in the future. There will be endless troubles in the future. My suggestion is, even if you can't pull Wang Qinglei down this time, at least put him above Wu Yue and Yi Dongsheng. Wang Xiangxiao's body seemed to tremble because of anger. Li Tianlan emphasized the word, harvest. This was undoubtedly telling him that besides Zhongzhou State, Beihai couldn't get the benefits of East Island, Snow Country, and America. As for Zhongzhou State, it was already a great harvest to solve the hidden dangers within the Southeast group. After Chen Fangqing fell, they couldn't get the benefits either. Why don't I think we've gained a lot? Wang Xiangxiao was so angry that he laughed. Li Tianlan's appetite was beyond his imagination. If they really followed Li Tianlan's plan at this time, then in this final battle of Beihai, the Wang family of Beihai, which had paid countless efforts, could only stabilize the internal situation and gain nothing. This was not what Wang Xiangxiao wanted. Before the final battle, he wanted to be ruthless and more, all for the sake of benefits. After the final battle, Li Tianlan told him that he couldn't get anything. This psychological gap was so obvious that no matter how good Wang Xiangxiao's self-cultivation was, he couldn't help but lose his composure at this time. I think we are fully capable of getting something else. Wang Xiangxiao emphasized and looked at Li Tianlan with an extremely tough tone. Li Tianlan's expressionless face didn't change at all. He walked down the steps of the stage of Formidable Person and said blandly, I don't want what you think, I want what I think. He looked straight into Wang Xiangxiao's eyes and said, I think that what I said is enough. He pointed at the sword chi doppelganger on the stage of Formidable Person and laughed. If you're not convinced, why don't you let it try? Chapter 1025. Wang Xiangxiao stood where he was and kept silent for a long time. The expression on his face froze bit by bit, looking grim and stern. His eyes, which seemed to be peaceful at all times, were about to spit fire. You've gone too far. Wang Xiangxiao said in a deep voice. Europe, East Island, Snow Country, America, Zhongzhou State. Several superpowers were leaderless. Such a mess was destined to be the beginning of a new dynasty. The Wang family of Beihai was indeed unable to take care of other things now, but it didn't mean that it didn't want to fight for its own interests. In the eyes of Wang Xianxia, everyone in the Wang family of Beihai, and everyone in Beihai province, the victory of the final battle in Beihai was not a victory. Victory? No one had the face to say that now. The joint forces retreated, the Grand Master of East Island died, and Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu were both seriously injured. But so far, what did Beihai get? The Beihai Corps suffered heavy losses. Countless middle and basic officers were killed and injured. Several cities in Beihai were in a mess. Some people in Kanglan were still fighting in blood. The so-called victory was just the withdrawal of the joint forces from Beihai. All the victories were nominal. In fact, Beihai had suffered heavy losses. Such an outcome was a little too tragic for the entire North Sea. Wang Xianxiao tightened his face, and an extremely depressed emotion crazily pressed down on his heart. His face even turned purple for a moment. Everything was in line with his expectations, but there were also some unexpected things. Wang Tianzong's sword energy doppelganger did not attack Li Tianlan. This was something that Wang Xianxiao could not understand at all. At that moment, Li Tianlan was obviously an arrow at the end of its flight. As long as Wang Tianzong took action, it was inevitable that Wuyo would take away Wuqing. With the existence of the sword energy doppelganger, it was also inevitable that Wuyo would devour Wuqing. But now Wuqing was still with Li Tianlan. Without Heartless, everything had changed. In Wang Xiangxiao's expectation, the victory of the final battle in Beihai was just the beginning. After getting Wuqing, it was time for Beihai to really recover its losses. If it wanted to, Beihai could actually do a lot of things. In Snow Country, with the victory of the final battle and Wang Xiaoyao's serious injury, Wang Xiaoyao's position in Snow Country was bound to be unstable. Such a factor would make some special warfare agencies of Snow Country restless, and the Snow Dance Corps of Reki City would take advantage of it. But it would also give Mount Dibbing a chance to take back the power of Snow Country. Wang Xianxiao was not greedy enough to want to take back everything in Snow Country. Wang Xiaoyao would eventually stabilize his position, and the Snow Dance Corps would also occupy a part of the benefits. Wang Xianxiao would be satisfied if he could take back 1/3 of the power of Snow Country. As for the European continent, the Holy Land, which had suffered heavy losses, would recuperate with its tail between its legs. For a long time, the Dark Knights would expand. Emperor Dong's palace would unite the power of the Dark Knights to go out of the northern part of the European continent. But the Wang family of Beihai also had allies in the European continent. Although Queen King Tong of Shadow was completely abolished by Li Tianlan more than 2 years ago, Paul's injury was gradually recovering. Rothschild had a deep foundation and had always been one of the strongest allies of Mount Dibbing. With the help of Rothschild, the Wang family of Beihai could also get a part of the benefits in the European continent. As for America, the Wang family of Beihai could not reach it. Their most likely gain in America was nothing more than to buy some industries that originally belonged to the Jiang family of South America, and they were doomed to not get the best industrial resources. It was better than nothing. As for East Island, Wang Xianxiao did not want to compete with Emperor Dong's palace. He intended to give up East Island completely. Even in the action against the Prince Group in Jianghu State, Wang Xianxiao did not intend to take too many benefits. Instead, he intended to support the new group as compensation for the Wang family of Beihai taking away Wuqing and giving it to Emperor Dong's palace. But now, well, Wuqing was still with Li Tianlan. As soon as Li Tianlan opened his mouth, he directly took away the interests of the Wang family of Beihai and wanted to take all the interests of Jianghu State. Then, it was obvious that if the Wang family of Beihai attacked other places, Emperor Dong's palace's attitude would be needless to say. Even if Wang Xianxiao was made of mud, he was full of anger at this time. He completely put on an unyielding posture. I deserve it. Li Tianlan glanced at him and said, I know Wuyo is here, and I know what you are up to, but I still come. In fact, there is no such thing as too much or not too much. You and I both know what is going on. You didn't do what you wanted to do, so next, I will do what I want to do. It's fair, isn't it? Wang Xianxiao stopped breathing and couldn't say a word for a while. Li Tianlan's words were full of hints, both soft and hard. What made him most helpless was that although there was Wang Tianzong's sword Qi doppelganger on Mount Dibbing, if he looked at the pattern of the whole dark world, when Li Tianlan spoke with strength, the Wang family of Beihai really had no power to refute. Wang Xianxiao took several deep breaths, but he managed to calm down. After dealing with things in Beihai, we have something to talk about. Li Tianlan twitched the corner of his mouth and said with a faint smile, "Let's talk about it later." Wang Xianxia said no more and waved his hand to ask someone to arrange a helicopter. The helicopter was quickly in position. He watched Li Tianlan's figure enter the cabin and watched the helicopter take off. His mind was still thinking about the unplanned variables. He was not sure where the variables were, but looking at the vibrant ruins around him, he subconsciously felt that something was wrong. Wang Tianzong's sword Qi doppelganger was more complete and powerful than their boldest imagination. If all this had nothing to do with the rain that revived all things, Wang Xianxia would not believe it. But the key was, where did the rain come from? Was it man-made? If it was man-made, it could explain why Wang Tianzong did not attack Li Tianlan. He should have reached some kind of deal with the owner of the rain behind the scenes. But there was another problem. Wang Tianzong was in Beihai prison and unconscious. Even if the sword Qi doppelganger was now complete, most of it was Wuyo's energy, and Wang Tianzong's consciousness only occupied a small part. If the rain was man-made, how could that person communicate with Wang Tianzong, who was in a deep coma? Everything was revived, and the vitality was majestic. If such a rain could be artificially arranged, was the person behind the scenes still a human being? The helicopter was getting farther and farther away from his sight. Wang Xianxia stood there silently. After a long time, he murmured to himself, "What the hell is it?" The power that was almost out of control was roaring in the dense forest with completely crazy killing intent. There was a gust of wind in the cold forest. The wind was as sharp as a knife, tearing up nearby trees and dead branches. Fallen leaves and snow were dancing in the air at the same time. Blood flowed down from every corner of his body. The pungent smell of blood surrounded him, and the tearing pain swept through his whole body. Jianghu sat under a withered tree with red eyes and gritted his teeth. Because of extreme anger, his body kept trembling. "You have never failed." Li Guangtu's weak and hoarse voice rang out beside him. Before his voice had died away, the ruler of the Purgatory of Heaven capital had already coughed violently. Thick blood kept coughing out of his mouth. He was short of breath, and his face was as pale as paper. His breath had fallen to the bottom. When Wuyo jumped out of the sea, it was Jianghu who blocked most of the sword chi of Wuyo and Wang Tianzong. But at this time, looking at the specific situation, Li Guangtu's injury was much more serious than Jianghu's. "I thought you were a very calm person. You have endured for many years just to break out. Many times, I even admire you. But now you are a little out of control. It's just a failure. The situation is not irreversible." Li Guangtu kept gasping and said with a low smile, "When I was young, I wanted the Li family to annex the Wang family of Beihai. At that time, my father once told me that the Wang family of Beihai's Mount Dibing had a power that the Li family couldn't resist. Even if that power had a limit, it was enough to destroy the Li family countless times before that power was exhausted." Ahem. Ahem. Haha, I didn't believe it at that time. But today, it seems that it's true. You and I both know that it's similar to the power of a murderous weapon, so it must have a limit. It can attack once or twice. I don't believe that its energy is endless. If that's the case, why does the Wang family of Beihai hide it? It could have unified the dark world with it. At present we have indeed lost. The joint forces have suffered heavy losses, but the opportunity is still there. What we should do most is to find a way to erase the energy reserve of that thing. So what if we have failed? When the energy reserve of Mount Dibing is exhausted, we can completely launch a second decisive battle in Beihai. You are far younger than me. Why are you not as open-minded as I am? Don't let me look down on you. What do you know? Jianghu silently listened to Li Guangtu's words. After he finished speaking, he said something extremely gloomy and cold. As he spoke, wisps of killing intent surged uncontrollably again. Jianghu's eyes became more and more scarlet, with naked gloom and resentment. He could ignore a failure. But no one knew what he had paid in a very short time to fight against Wuyo's energy. Yagyu Kurumi, Tianhai Wuji, and Jiang Guochu. 2 disciples and an ally. Losing them would hurt his heart, and it would greatly damage the vitality of his joint forces. But it was not enough to make him lose his mind. What made him completely unable to calm down was his current state. Compared with Li Guangtu, who was seriously injured, his current state was too good, so good that it was incredible to everyone. Xianxia was also seriously injured and exhausted. But even so, if he wanted to do it now, he could still barely maintain the combat capability beyond the peak of the invincible realm. What this meant could be imagined. Not to mention Jiang Shangyu's realm, his current defensive power was probably close to that of Wang Tianzong in Mormon's, and it was infinitely close. Li Guangtu couldn't understand how Jiang Shangyu maintained his current state in that kind of sword energy. It was true that the defense of a domain-type master was stronger than that of a kendo master, but it was impossible to be so ridiculously strong. Jiang Shangyu could be said to be seriously injured now, but he could also be said to be fine. Li Guangtu didn't know why this happened, so he naturally didn't know what Jiang Shangyu had experienced at that moment. Similar to Li Tianlan, Jiang Shangyu's body was also a weakness. The weakness of Li Tianlan's body was that it was not strong enough. Jiang Shangyu's body was strong enough, but the two different kinds of extreme toxins in his body were destroying his body all the time. Fortunately, he had another self. In the normal state, Jiang Shangyu was actually much weaker than everyone thought. He could barely maintain the realm at the peak of the invincible realm. If he wanted to fight with all his strength, the other self had to fall into a deep sleep. The two of them were originally one person, so to some extent, the other self could bear a lot of damage for him. With the help of various drugs, this also meant that his physical strength had doubled and reached the real supreme threshold. He was in a good state now, because the other self had borne unimaginable damage. After this battle, Jiang Shangyu couldn't even be sure whether the other self could continue to live. This was definitely equivalent to paying a real life. Jiang Shangyu had never even thought about such a heavy price. It doesn't matter whether I understand or not. What matters is that we still have a chance now. We can recuperate and make a comeback. Li Guangtu said blandly. He was seriously injured. If Jiang Shangyu wanted to, he could completely kill him at any time. But Li Guangtu didn't care about this. After the final battle in Beihai, the situation in the Dark World became clearer. The Wang family of Beihai and Emperor Dong's palace were allies above the bottom line. He and Jiang Shangyu, before either of them reached the real supreme realm, they were allies in all aspects. If the lips died, the teeth would be interdependent. No matter which one was missing, it would be difficult for the other to continue to exist. You're a ruthless man. Jiang Shangyu took several deep breaths and suddenly said, "There was a time when I admired you very much. Your stubbornness can make you completely ignore everything. So when the situation develops to a certain extent, there is nothing you can't do, and there is nothing you can't do. But do you know what your biggest weakness is?" Li Guangtu narrowed his eyes and looked at Jiang Shangyu, his eyes deep. Jiang Shangyu waved his hand expressionlessly. In the forest, the fallen leaves swept and gradually buried Moraid, who had fallen into a coma beside Jiang Shangyu. Moraid's injury was also extremely serious, but it was not fatal. Jiang Shangyu had injected him with a large number of top-level recovery drugs of the sanctuary. In 24 hours at most, he could wake up from a coma and barely regain his ability to move. This was a forest located between Shangzhou and Mount Dibing. It was vast and populated. It was just the blind spot of Mount Dibing. In 24 hours, Beihai had no power to search here. They had too many things to do. After 24 hours, when Moraid woke up, he could leave Beihai by himself. But now, if Jiang Shangyu insisted on taking him with him, that would be the most dangerous. Say it. Li Guangtu looked at Jiang Shangyu's movements and said blandly. You're too courageous, so you're very brave to admit your failure. Jiang Shangyu laughed. I'm different from you. I used to be a nobody with many shortcomings. Even now, I don't have the mentality of a big shot. When things change and the plan goes wrong, my mentality will collapse and my emotions will explode. I'm not willing to accept failure, and I don't want to admit the current result. Li Guangtu sneered. So what? Now we've failed. Indeed. Jiang Shangyu nodded. You're right. We've failed, but it doesn't mean that we can't continue to do something. I want to make a comeback. In this situation, do you think there's a possibility for me to make a comeback? Li Guangtu suddenly fell silent. At this moment, he suddenly understood what Jiang Shangyu wanted to do next. Is there a possibility to make a comeback? He pondered silently and sensed his current state. After a long time, Li Guangtu, who looked solemn, said in a deep voice, Are you crazy? You're not blind, and neither am I. We all have eyes, and we can see that his current state is not good. Jianghu said indifferently, I don't care whether I'm crazy or not. You just need to tell me, is there a possibility for us to make a comeback? Li Guangtu continued to be silent. After a long time he took a deep breath and said, I don't know. I don't know either. Jiang Shangyu laughed. Since you don't know, it's easy to do. He reached out to Li Guangtu. You, me, and ourselves are our only chips now. I can't accept the current failure, so now, would you like to bet with me? The helicopter roared in the air, and Mount Dibing was getting farther and farther away. The outline of Xianghu city had appeared in Li Tianlan's sight. Only Li Tianlan sat quietly in the spacious cabin, and he was also thinking about the problem that Wang Xiangxiao was thinking about. Mochizuki Sange, who was in a coma, lay silently in the corridor in the center of the cabin. Her body had been injected with a lot of recovery potions, and her breath had gradually stabilized. The Wang family of Beihai also found Mochizuki Sange's severed arm. After simple but extremely high-end treatment, Mochizuki Sange's severed arm could be connected. Because the medicine used was absolutely precious, it would hardly have any impact on Mochizuki Sange in the future. Li Tianlan also took her on the plane. After confirming that her state was fine, he didn't pay much attention to her for the time being. He was also very curious about why Wang Tianzong didn't attack him at that time. He was in an extremely bad state at that time, but he had a trump card. He could use the ruthless power to save Mochizuki Sange and directly reverse the situation that had been in a stalemate for a long time at that moment. Naturally, it was not an impulse to do so. Li Tianlan also considered himself. If he had no other means, even if he went to save Mochizuki Sange, he would have other choices. But at that time, after smashing the first sword chi clone of Wang Tianzong, in everyone's heart, he should have been really at the end of the road. In fact, it was not wrong to say so. Li Tianlan did have other means at that time. But he hadn't used the so-called means himself, so he didn't know what kind of consequences it would cause. The only thing he could be sure of was that he should be able to reluctantly accept the consequences. But it was difficult for the entire Mount Dibing and the Wang family of Beihai to face such a result. Wang Tianzong didn't attack, so it was naturally meaningless to talk about it now. But why Wang Tianzong didn't attack was what Li Tianlan was most interested in. He was more sure than Wang Xiangxiao that there was a huge man-made factor in the rain. That kind of exuberant vitality was completely the aura of the dragon vein. Obviously, the person behind the rain also had a huge blessing in his body. And in terms of scale, just judging from the vitality of the rain, the vitality and luck of the other party were at least countless times stronger than that of the dragon vein in Li Tianlan's body. But in terms of quality, the other party was obviously not as good as the dragon vein. Now no matter how he thought about it, the only reason why Wang Tianzong didn't attack was because of the person behind the rain. The key was who this person was. Judging from the choice and position he made, it was obvious that he was helping Emperor Dong's palace. If he hadn't appeared, Wang Tianzong's sword chi clone wouldn't have been so complete. In that case, Li Tianlan would have to face Wuyo, who couldn't communicate with him at all. If the stalemate continued, it was likely to be another story. The other party helped him and Wang Tianzong, but he hadn't shown up so far. Li Tianlan had no idea what the other party wanted to do. The phone suddenly rang, interrupting his thoughts. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly and glanced at the number. It was a call from Wang Xiangxiao. Li Tianlan answered the call, feeling somewhat baffled. Hello. I'm afraid you'll misunderstand, so I think we can talk now. Wang Xiangxiao said quietly. What do we have to talk about? If it's about cooperation, you can talk to Han Donglu. Li Tianlan said lightly. No, I have a question. Wang Xiangxiao smiled and said, If my father's sword chi clone really attacked you just now, do you have the confidence to break the trap? Li Tianlan fell silent. Does it make sense? He suddenly asked. This so-called, if, could only be an assumption forever. In fact, Wang Tianzong's sword chi clone had never attacked. Now that he had left Mount Dibing, Wang Tianzong's sword chi clone had no chance to attack. It doesn't make any practical sense, but I need an answer in my heart. An answer that can convince myself. Wang Xiangxiao said lightly, If my father's sword chi clone really attacked you just now, do you have the confidence to block that sword? Li Tianlan smiled. He seemed to understand Wang Xiangxiao's mind. After thinking about it, he slowly said, "No." Before Wang Xiangxiao continued, Li Tianlan continued, "But I have the confidence to completely destroy the Wang family of Beihai." Chapter 10:26. Wang Xiangxiao showed an expression that said, "Are you King bluffing me?" All the emotional fluctuations in his heart were clearly expressed. "You don't even have the confidence to block that sword. How can you destroy the Wang family of Beihai?" Li Tianlan didn't explain anything. The outline of Xiangzhou city in the distance gradually became clear. He would take a plane from Xiangzhou to Nanyun, and then return to Tiannan. Everything seemed to be over. But the next thing was complicated. Tiannan, Zhongzhou State, East Island, Snow Country, Europe, America. Li Tianlan's life would gradually become busy. And such a busy life was what he had been looking forward to for a long time. The whole Li family had been looking forward to it for a long time. The Li family. A strange color flashed in Li Tianlan's eyes. He sighed softly and shook his head. After hanging up the phone, he thought for a while and dialed Qin Weibai's number again. Tianlan. The phone was picked up as soon as it rang. It was obvious that Qin Weibai didn't sleep all night. Her voice was a little tired, but it was still gentle and soft. Li Tianlan's heart softened, and he said, "It's okay. It's all over. I'm on my way back." "That's good." Qin Weibai laughed, and even her voice became much brighter. "It must have been a hard night, right?" "Actually, it's okay. Although there are some variables, it's generally smooth. Mochizuki-song is here with me. She's in a coma, and her injury is a little serious. Talk to Nailin and let her arrange it." Li Tianlan said slowly. There was silence on the other end of the phone. 2 seconds later, Qin Weibai's normal voice sounded. "Okay." After a pause she continued, "Did you kill Xianxia?" "No." Li Tianlan felt it was a pity. At the moment when Wuyo rolled up the sword energy all over the sky, both Xianxia and Li Guangtu were at a dead end. Li Tianlan also tried to join forces with Wuyo at that time, so he made a sword strike. At that time, Xianxia was in a very strange state. Li Tianlan could be sure that Xianxia had suffered unimaginable and even irreversible damage, but the fact told him that Xianxia's state was countless times better than he thought. He didn't care about this at first, because everything was meaningless. As long as he and Wuyo joined forces, their strength was absolutely crushing. He had absolute confidence to kill Xianxia in that state, and even capture Li Guangtu alive. There would be no accidents. But Worryless, who had made him its first target, didn't cooperate. It didn't even care about Li Guangtu and Xianxia's escape. Instead, it focused all its attention on him. In Li Tianlan's opinion, it could be said that he was an absolutely stupid teammate. Not only did he let Xianxia and Li Guangtu go, but he also didn't let him chase them. Thinking about it now, Li Tianlan felt uncomfortable for a while. He believed that the Wang family of Beihai was even more annoyed. "I was stopped by Worryless. Li Guangtu and Xianxia were seriously injured, but they ran away with more aid." "Only more aid?" Qin Weibai asked. Li Tianlan said, Qin Weibai's voice became softer and softer, with great satisfaction. "I really have to call you Your Majesty from now on. I am His Majesty, and you are the Empress," Li Tianlan said with a smile, without any hesitation. Qin Weibai was silent for a moment and whispered, "Come back soon. I miss you." Li Tianlan agreed and suddenly asked, "How about East Island?" "It's coming to an end," Qin Weibai said softly. "I just talked to them on the phone. In East Island, Jianghu seemed to have reached an agreement with the Holy Land. The newly trained Invincible Realm expert, Glavich, and 2,000 elites of the Holy Disarmament Corps were all sent to East Island. Glavich died, and the Holy Disarmament Corps also suffered heavy casualties. The Nightmare Troop flattened the headquarters of Jifeng Sword Training School and Wuji Palace. At present, there are still some special warfare forces inside East Island, but they have been broken up. You said that Jianghu and Li Guangtu only took more aid away. Then, without Yagyu Kurumi and Tianhai Wuji, everything in East Island has been settled. It just needs some time to clean up and establish the order of Emperor Dong's palace. Saint and Hidden God have already met. In the next period of time, Most of them will stay in East Island. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and said softly, "When the time is right, I will go to East Island again." "How is the loss of the nightmare troop?" Qin Weibai's voice stopped. The loss of the nightmare troop in East Island had been calculated as soon as possible. What Situ Tsongyue and Saint reported was an unbelievable and absurd number. When Qin Weibai heard the number for the first time, she even thought it was a joke. 161 people of the nightmare troop died in battle. No serious injuries, no minor injuries. Qin Weibai said in a strange tone. Li Tianlan nodded subconsciously. Then he suddenly realized something and asked, "What is it?" He asked, as if he suspected that he had heard it wrong. Situ Tsongyue and Saint were both experts of the invincible realm. The former was close to the peak of the invincible realm, and the latter's invincible realm had not been completely stabilized, but his sword energy and sword intent were extremely sharp. These two people led the nightmare troop. When he blocked the purgatory of Heaven Capital, they were fully qualified to wipe out the dark forces in East Island. Li Tianlan was not surprised by this result. What surprised him was the number of casualties. Wiping out Jifeng Sword Training School, Wuji Palace, fighting with the Holy Disarmament Corps, countless dark forces big and small in East Island. It was a night of desperate fighting. Less than 200 people of the nightmare troop with 2,000 people died in battle? And there were no serious injuries. No minor injuries. This also meant that after the nightmare troop wiped out East Island with less than 1/10 of the casualties, all the remaining people were still in a vigorous state? 61 people of the Hidden Gods team died in battle, and 100 people of the Saints team died in battle. The only difference is that the former met Shenyuan Wuxiang earlier. Qin Weibai's voice gradually became serious. After meeting the fat man, it seemed that everything started to become strange. At present, all these changes were greatly beneficial to Emperor Dong's palace, but the feeling that something was out of control became more and more obvious. Qin Weibai didn't like this feeling, although Shenyuan Wuxiang did make a great contribution to Emperor Dong's palace overnight. The Hidden God and the Saint confirmed that no matter how chaotic the battle was after Shenyuan Wuxiang arrived on the battlefield, from the moment he appeared, not a single one of our elites was lost. Not to mention any losses, we didn't even suffer any light injuries. Although the Nightmare Legion's physical strength is severely depleted, their overall condition is unbelievably good. Shenyuan Wuxiang, Li Tianlan murmured to himself and suddenly said, "He said he was a doctor?" Qin Weibai nodded. "What kind of doctor is he? A miracle-working doctor?" Li Tianlan laughed. "Anyway, Tianlan, you have to have a good talk with him. It is said that when the battle in East Island was at its fiercest, it rained, and it was in that rain that all the soldiers' injuries were healed. Don't you think this is very similar to the effect of the dragon vein?" Qin Weibai said softly. "Rain, rain." Li Tianlan suddenly thought of the rain on Mount Dibing. An incomparably sharp light flashed in his eyes. "I got it." Li Tianlan took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Where is Shenyuan Wuxiang?" "He's already on the way back." After he brought Saint and the Hidden God, he came back with Xing Tian by helicopter. "If your plane is not delayed, you should arrive at Tiannan at about the same time," Qin Weibai said. Li Tianlan said, in his mind, the rain on Mount Dibing became clearer and clearer. Everything was revived, and the vitality was majestic. Li Tianlan thought quietly and narrowed his eyes tightly. Chapter 10:27. Li Tianlan thought for a while, then shook his head slightly and continued, "I should arrive earlier than him. If I'm late, you can receive him for me first. It won't take long." Li Tianlan was almost sure that the rain on Mount Dibing had something to do with Shenyuan Wuxiang. In this way, he had the answer to why Wang Tianzong's sword Qi doppelganger suddenly had a complete consciousness. Otherwise, in Wang Tianzong's state, the current sword Qi doppelganger should be dominated by worryless. Shenyuan Wuxiang did help Wang Tianzong, but in Li Tianlan's view, he could do far more than that. Only he could vaguely feel what the majestic vitality meant. At this time, Wang Tianzong's injury had indeed improved a lot, but strictly speaking, he was just barely out of the line of death, and his consciousness was relatively active. Shenyuan Wuxiang saved Wang Tianzong's life, but if he wanted to, according to the scale of the rain, Li Tianlan had no doubt that Shenyuan Wuxiang could temporarily wake Wang Tianzong up. He could do it, but he didn't. His help saved Li Tianlan from the crisis of facing Worryless, which was undoubtedly his kindness to Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianlan didn't know if the rain meant that Xianyuan Wushang carried the fate of other countries, or something else. But in the face of such a person, even if he really ran to him and called him Big Brother, he couldn't really treat him as a little brother. Apart from other things, since he went to East Island and entered the battlefield, Emperor Dong's palace didn't lose anyone. For this alone, Xianyuan Wushang deserved some respect from Li Tianlan. Okay, I'll arrange it. Qin Weibai nodded and said softly. Li Tianlan nodded and heard the sound of his phone running out of battery. He slowly shook his head and said, "The phone is running out of battery. I'm hanging up." Okay. Qin Weibai paused and suddenly said, "Is Beihai really okay?" The helicopter was flying above. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and said, "Are you worried that the joint forces will come back? Even if they will, I don't know how long it will be, at least not now." "No, I mean, although you helped Beihai, Wang Xiangxiao seems to have feelings for Wuqing." Qin Weibai said softly. "He can only think about it." Li Tianlan smiled a little coldly. "I'm in good health now, but I'm in a bad state. But no matter what, Wang Tianzong's Beihai can handle me. Wang Xiangxiao is under a lot of pressure. He has too many things on his back, so it's inevitable that he's overcautious. I don't care what he thinks, just like many people have ideas about you. I dare to chop him up, but he doesn't dare to. He doesn't even dare to try." How domineering. Qin Weibai's voice was sweet and sticky. Li Tianlan laughed. He was not complacent, but he inevitably felt a little relieved. "I actually hoped that he could try, but unfortunately—" Silence. Li Tianlan was still speaking. However, all sounds seemed to have disappeared in an instant. Gotcha. The phone shattered in Li Tianlan's hand. Li Tianlan's pupils instantly contracted to the extreme. The moment the fragments of the mobile phone fell from his hand, Li Tianlan stretched out his palm. Heartless, who had already transformed into a great sword, suddenly shuddered. Boom! An earth-shattering noise suddenly sounded in the dense forest below the helicopter, roaring endlessly. There were many people in the dark world who had ideas about Li Tianlan, and there were also many people who had ideas about Heartless. If they killed Li Tianlan, they would get benefits. If they killed Heartless, they would get absolutely invincible force. What Wang Xiangxiao dared not try, someone dared to try. The surrounding space was turbulent and shattered. The normal flying helicopter was directly torn into scrap iron in the moment when the domain fluctuated. The pilot of the Wang family of Beihai silently evaporated in the air. Li Tianlan's palm touched the hilt of the sword. A streak of sword energy protected moon gaze and song in front of him. In his sight, the whole forest below was shaking wildly. The majestic sword energy and the tide-like domain merged with each other, forming a wave of air that swept through the area of 10,000 meters in an instant. The domain and the sword energy were completely boiling, rising into the sky, and in an instant, they were directly in front of Li Tianlan. They were caught off guard. Jianghu. Li Kuang too. Li Tianlan was not on guard at all. The surging sword light and domain, which were enough to tear everything apart, surged into the sky. Jiang Shangyu and Li Kuangtu could not be seen. Their joint attack lifted the whole forest in an instant. Broken tree trunks, flying leaves, and cold snow flew toward Li Tianlan under the surging power. They covered the sky and the sun. They arrived in an instant. No one expected Jiang Shangyu and Li Kuangtu to appear here. The two of them, who were seriously injured, did not escape. Instead, they ambushed Li Tianlan here. There was no despicable and shameless saying in the dark world. There was no doubt that if Li Tianlan died here today, then the final battle in Beihai would be a wonderful turnaround for Jiang Shangyu and Li Kuangtu. Li Tianlan raised the Heartless in his hand. The huge sword body of the Heartless trembled violently. Bang! The dark sword body shattered in an instant. The little energy that was left in the Heartless suddenly burst out at the most critical moment. The colorful energy was mighty. At the moment when the sword light and the broken domain hit Li Tianlan, it formed a protective shield and enveloped Li Tianlan. It was like a huge wave crashing against the reef. The boundless surging domain and the sword light directly collided with the protective barrier, and then rushed past it. The domain and the sword light surged into the distance, and then turned back at a faster speed. Standing in the protective shield, Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes tightly. Ahem. A hoarse cough with a hint of weakness could be heard. Li Tianlan still did not see Li Guangtu and Xianxia, but Li Guangtu's voice seemed to be in his ears. Our enmity actually began in Tiandu. As if he was muttering to himself, Li Guangtu's voice had an extremely depressed and cold emotion. My only son died in the hands of the Samsara Palace. It can only be that he died in the hands of the Samsara Palace. The sword light was surging. The two experts who had surpassed the peak of the invincible realm attacked with all their strength. The little energy that was left in the Heartless was consumed at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the protective shield was getting thinner and thinner. There was no doubt that when the protective shield broke, Li Tianlan, who had almost no physical strength, would be completely torn apart in an instant. It's that bitch Qin Weibai's idea. Li Guangtu laughed extremely coldly. Go in peace. If you see the old man on the way, tell him that I will make the Li family surpass the peak. You can all rest in peace. I will get Emperor Dong's palace, and I will get Qin Weibai. She killed my son, so she must give me another one. The boiling sword light suddenly intensified. In an instant, the morning sunshine was completely suppressed. It was dark between heaven and earth, and only the extremely crazy sword energy rushed over endlessly. Crack. A ghastly crack appeared on the protective barrier. Li Guangtu's voice fell. Everything you have is mine. Crack. The cracks covered the entire protective shield in an instant. Li Tianlan, who was expressionless, looked at the sword light in front of him and whispered, "Isn't it good to be alive?" The shattered Heartless had become the 13-story building, constantly shaking around Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan had no sword in his hand. He just raised his palm casually and closed his eyes. His finger lightly tapped on the protective shield. A weak, almost imperceptible sword energy flowed out of Li Tianlan's hand. The darkness was instantly broken. The sun shrouded the earth again. The sword energy in Li Tianlan's hand disappeared. The surging domain and sword light in front of him also completely disappeared. Puff! Blood spurted out of Li Tianlan's mouth. The tiny, almost imperceptible sword energy slowly fluctuated between heaven and earth. Puff! Not only the corners of his mouth, but every part of Li Tianlan's body was breaking. Blood spurted out of his body. As far as his eyes could see, everything was disappearing. The forest within the area of tens of thousands of meters disappeared completely in an instant. It was not breaking. It was really, inexplicably disappearing without warning. Li Tianlan's body trembled violently. Thousands of wounds appeared on his body in an instant, covering his whole body. At the same time, European land. In Worry's villa. Qin Weibai, who was lying quietly in the nutrition chamber, frowned slightly. A clear crack appeared between her eyebrows, and crystal blood flowed out from between her eyebrows. On the helicopter from East Island to Tiannan, Shenyuan Wuxiang's face changed dramatically. He couldn't see Li Tianlan through the screen, but at this moment, in his sight, the whole world had changed completely. The tiny sword energy that seemed to disappear at any time was still surging in Beihai. The tens of thousands of meters of forest had completely disappeared. The sword energy was surging, rushing to Mount Dibing and Shenzhou City. Everything disappeared silently the moment it came into contact with the sword qi. Li Tianlan's body was almost drained of vitality in an instant, and even his heart began to break. F***ck. Shenyuan Wuxiang suddenly cursed. In front of Saint, he suddenly stood up. The moment he stood up, there were many illusory blue lines in the whole world. Countless symbols replaced the surrounding space and filled the world. At the same time, the world around Li Tianlan suddenly became virtual. Countless lines wandered wildly between heaven and earth, flashing one symbol after another. The world became completely virtual in an instant. There was no distance in the virtual world. Shenyuan Wuxiang took a step forward. The next second, his chubby hand directly grabbed Li Tianlan's shoulder, and his whole body appeared in front of Li Tianlan. The voice of F***ck was still echoing over East Island. Above Beihai, Shenyuan Wuxiang's voice also rang out, "Are you crazy?" Endless vitality poured into Li Tianlan's body. The sword energy that was slowly fluctuating in the distance disappeared without a trace the moment he appeared. Crack! The world returned to normal. The virtual world became real again. The eyes on the bridge of Shenyuan Wushang's nose exploded without warning. The fragments flew everywhere, and two dazzling red lines of blood flowed out of Shenyuan Wushang's eyes. Li Tianlan's consciousness was completely blurred, and he was about to fall silent. Shenyuan Wushang's glasses exploded. He was only a doctor, and he didn't even have the ability to float. The two of them leaned close to each other, and fell from the sky quickly. At the same time, the two of them fell. No one knew how far away, in an incomparably huge and magnificent laboratory, countless signal lights all lit up in an instant. The next second, a clear and somewhat weird voice rang out. Miracle City found, location confirmed, Apostle number 6 is about to go, distance estimation in progress, distance estimation complete, distance unknown, set off immediately. Chapter 1028. Bang! Smoke and dust flew all over the sky. Shenyuan Wushang held Li Tianlan, who was covered in blood, and smashed him to the ground. Shenyuan Wushang, who looked sad and angry, felt that he was not cool at all. He landed in a very awkward position, but his body was not injured. Blood was still flowing from his eyes, dripping. The drops of blood were extremely bright in the sun, red and dazzling. Shenyuan Wushang wiped his eyes casually and opened his eyes, which were completely overflowing with blood. As soon as he got up, he began to check Li Tianlan's situation. In the silent world, there was an extremely subtle sound. Blood penetrated the skin, cut through the clothes, and soaked the ground. Li Tianlan lay quietly on the ground without a sound. It seemed that he had completely died. His injury seemed to have almost completely destroyed his consciousness. He was so seriously injured that even the dragon vein had fallen silent. The white mist of vitality that seemed to be able to heal his body at any time soon disappeared. Crazy! Shenyuan Wushang muttered to himself. He opened his eyes, and blood kept flowing from his eyes. His eyes were blood red, which looked extremely horrible, as if he was shedding tears of blood. I knew you were fierce, but you were too fierce. Damn it! I knew there was a trap in the 24 moves of sword left by that guy. Reincarnation. Damn you! Shenyuan Wushang gently pressed his hand on Li Tianlan's chest. Strong vitality bloomed in an instant. The completely boiling white mist rose into the sky with strong vitality. From a distance, it seemed that a huge cloud had suddenly appeared above the two of them. Shenyuan Wushang's whole body was emitting a faint light. The light was not dazzling, but it looked soft and lively. Wisps of light enveloped Li Tianlan little by little, healing the wounds on his body. Li Tianlan's body lay quietly on the ground. His body began to sink slowly. Shenyuan Wushang's body was also sinking. The wind and clouds were surging in the empty forest, and the majestic vitality kept surging more and more intense. The flat land under Li Tianlan had quickly turned into yellow sand at a speed visible to the naked eye. The range of the yellow sand kept expanding. 10 meters, 100 meters, 1,000 meters, several thousand meters. The originally lush forest was razed to the ground by Li Tianlan's sword. Now, as the white fog surged, the forest within an area of nearly 10,000 meters completely turned into a desert at a speed that was enough to make everyone stunned. Shenyuan Wushang was expressionless, but his seemingly harmless face was extremely stern. The soft light shrunk back and forth between him and Li Tianlan. Within an area of nearly 10,000 meters, every blade of grass, every tree, and even the vitality of the earth were all extracted by him to heal Li Tianlan's wounds. The wounds on Li Tianlan's body were disappearing at a very slow rate. And with the two of them as the center of the area of the desert, it was getting bigger and bigger. Shenyuan Wushang hesitated, glanced in the direction of Mount Dibing, and slowly stopped. The light dissipated. Most of the wounds on Li Tianlan's body had healed completely. However, the inside of his body was still in a state of fragmentation. His consciousness had already declined to the lowest point, like a candle that was about to burn out. He didn't even need wind. Just a small gust of air was enough to completely extinguish the flame. Shenyuan Wushang's eyes were gloomy. This kind of injury was indeed extremely terrible. But Shenyuan Wushang thought he was the most professional doctor. If this kind of injury happened to someone else, or in another place, it would not be a problem for him at all. He had countless ways to make the other person recover in the shortest time possible. But he couldn't cure Li Tianlan. It was just like how it was difficult for him to cure Qin Wei Bai in a short time. Because of Qin Wei Bai, he could do almost nothing about Li Tianlan's current injury. Real. Shen Yuan Wushang muttered to himself, and his whole person became more and more irritable. Li Tianlan's current injury was so serious because of the sword energy. This could definitely be regarded as a huge mistake. But it was also a mistake that Shen Yuan Wushang had not expected at all. Xing Tian's attack in East Island changed something. At that time, Shen Yuan Wushang saw Li Tianlan's abnormality on the screen, but his attention was all on Wuqing. Wuqing could feel the sword energy in the sky, and he was not surprised. But Shen Yuan Wushang did not expect that Li Tianlan could also feel the sword energy. Perhaps in Li Tianlan's mind, his kendo was already perfect, and there was no sword energy that he could not withstand. So in the face of Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu's sneak attack, he directly used the thing that he did not see clearly and was not even sure if it was sword energy. The 15th blade, Samsara. After that, it was not the shattering of land, but an imitation of the sword energy. Li Tianlan's imitation was somewhat nondescript. It could be said that he did not grasp the essence at all, and did not even have the shape. But that kind of sword energy should not have existed. Even if it was just an imitation, Li Tianlan suffered irreversible damage in an instant. And that nondescript sword energy also did not completely break out, but there was a wisp of seemingly and extremely weak sword intent. The moment the sword intent surged, the vitality in Li Tianlan's body had almost been drained. His body was completely torn apart, and his internal organs were permanently damaged. The foundation of martial arts was almost completely broken, and his spiritual will was in chaos. Shen Yuan Wushang alone could do nothing about Li Tianlan's current state. If it were not for Qin Wei Bai of the Worry-Free Villa, Li Tianlan would have completely died the moment the sword energy appeared. Shen Yuan Wushang tried to enter the depths of Li Tianlan's consciousness, but his several attempts all ended in failure. Li Tianlan's consciousness still existed. But that kind of existence was almost non-existent. You are really my brother. Can I call you my brother? Shen Yuan Wushang smiled bitterly. I just got here, and I'm going to ask for help from my family. Will many people think that I'm a good-for-nothing? He muttered to himself and stretched out his palm. Pieces of glimmer appeared in the sun. Let's get out of here first. Shen Yuan Wushang whispered. Countless broken glimmers gathered in Shen Yuan Wushang's hand. Those were the fragments of his glasses that had been blown up when he was in the air. Tisk! Shen Yuan Wushang shook his head. I can use it again. He clenched the fragments in his hand. All kinds of light enveloped him and Li Tianlan. Heaven and earth were nothingness. Everything around them was distorting. The desert, the cold wind, the sky, the white clouds, the sun. Everything became fainter and fainter in the distortion. Shen Yuan Wushang carefully carried Li Tianlan on his back. Feeling his cold body temperature, Shen Yuan Wushang also felt cold in his heart. His expression looked extremely tragic. Everything in the world disappeared. Amidst the extreme distortions, everything in the surroundings turned into pieces of virtual yet existing data. Shen Yuan Wushang sighed and took a step forward with Li Tianlan on his back. The broken piece of glasses in his hand suddenly shattered into pieces, turning into a cloud of dust. The surrounding environment instantly changed from cold to warm. Shen Yuan Wushang appeared in a warm and comfortable bedroom with Li Tianlan on his back. The bedroom was filled with a natural and rich fragrance. Shen Yuan Wushang carefully put Li Tianlan on the big bed in the bedroom. The sun in Tiannan was just right. Shen Yuan Wushang hesitated, then opened the door and went out. Outside the bedroom was a luxurious corridor. Shen Yuan Wushang entered the elevator. The elevator went all the way down to the first floor. When the elevator door opened, what appeared in front of Shen Yuan Wushang was the picture of the hall on the first floor of the headquarters of Emperor Dong's palace. Qin Wei Bai had just put down the phone in her hand and was about to enter the elevator with a slight frown. She did not know why Li Tianlan suddenly hung up the phone, but the moment the phone was hung up, her heart was occupied by a fierce uneasiness without warning. Uneasy, she subconsciously raised her head the moment the elevator door opened. The next second, she was obviously stunned for a moment. Sister-in-law. Shen Yuan Wushang smiled helplessly. Qin Wei Bai looked stunned. Why are you here? It's not just me. Shen Yuan Wushang touched his nose. I brought my big brother back. He's in your bedroom now. Chapter 1029. The sound of the instrument's operation echoed in the bedroom. The pen kept recording all kinds of physical data on the paper. Nayland Shuriying stared at the constantly flowing symbols on the screen, her face stiff and pale. Qin Weibai sat by the bed and reached out to hold Li Tianlan's cold palm. She had been silent for a long time. Less than a minute after she hung up the phone, Shenyuan Wuxiang and Li Tianlan, who had not been together before, returned to Tiannan from East Island and Beihai respectively. This sounded absolutely incredible, but no one could care about it at this time. All Qin Weibai's thoughts were on Li Tianlan. Click! The subtle sound of the instrument suddenly increased a little, and then it stopped operating. Nayland Shuriying stared at the last line of symbols flowing out of the instrument and gently bit her lip. How is it? Qin Weibai raised her head and looked at Nayland Shuriying, a little nervous. Nayland Shuriying seemed to be confirming something. She reached out and took the notebook in the assistant's hand that recorded Li Tianlan's data. She glanced at it, and then fell silent again. Speak. Qin Weibai's heart kept sinking, and her voice became cold. She had a hunch about something. Li Tianlan's hand was held by her, and it was cold without any temperature. She hoped that she could hear a glimmer of hope. But Nayland Shuriying was destined not to give her this. His Majesty's physical condition is very good, that is to say, he has no trauma. But most of the tissues in his body have been torn apart, especially the heart and the area around the heart. There are more than 320 wounds of various kinds. At present, almost all the organs in His Majesty's body have lost activity, and they have basically stopped running and self-repairing, so. Nayland Shuriying paused and said with some embarrassment, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. Qin Weibai's body shook violently. Nayland Shuriying's voice continued. Now it seems that His Majesty's injury is even more serious than that of the one in Warefree Villa. At present, we can only test his body, and we can't even test his consciousness, or. She wanted to say something but stopped on second thought, but her meaning was very clear. Basically, it was unlikely that their instruments could not detect the patient's consciousness. Now that this happened, it seemed that there could only be one problem. Li Tianlan had lost consciousness. Without consciousness, he was naturally a dead man. Li Tianlan had reached the limit of the human body in all aspects, ensuring the activity of his body. So now it seemed that he was still alive, but in fact, he had already died. This was Nayland Shuriying's conclusion. When she tested the master of Samsara Palace of Carefree Villa, the conclusion she got was that she was infinitely close to death, but at least there was still hope. But now Li Tianlan, being infinitely close to death and truly dying were two completely different concepts. Qin Weibai's body trembled slightly. She looked at Li Tianlan on the bed. Li Tianlan's face quickly became blurred and hazy in his sight. How could this be? She muttered to herself. We just hung up the phone. She touched Li Tianlan's face and looked around the bedroom blankly. Everything around him was a blur. Qin Weibai rubbed her eyes and finally saw Shenyuan Wuxiang, who was standing in a corner with a gloomy expression and seemed to be thinking about something. What happened? She asked softly. At this moment, Qin Weibai looked a little pitiful, but with a kind of extreme madness. Shenyuan Wuxiang's eyes flickered, and his mind wandered. He seemed to be hesitating about something, so he didn't hear Qin Weibai's voice at all, nor did he hear the conversation between Nayland Shuriying and Qin Weibai. Tell me, what's going on? Qin Weibai asked again. Her voice was faint, with an indescribable deathly stillness. Shenyuan Wuxiang suddenly came to his senses. This, he scratched his head. It's Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu. After they withdrew from Mount Dibing, they didn't choose to leave. They chose to sneak attack Big Brother on his way back. Big Brother used some means that he shouldn't have used now, so that his body couldn't bear the power he used and completely collapsed. Strictly speaking, it's not a big deal, but it's a little troublesome. Jiang Shangyu, Li Guangtu, sneak attack, completely collapsed. One word after another made Qin Weibai's eyes burn with endless madness, but all the crazy emotions disappeared at a faster speed. Nayland Shuriying looked at Shenyuan Wuxiang with a dull face. Both she and Qin Weibai captured Shenyuan Wuxiang's last words. It was not a big deal, but it was a little troublesome. If such a situation was not a big deal, then what was a big deal? Qin Weibai suddenly stood up. It seemed that because she used too much strength, her body swayed forward. She fell down. Horsewoman on the side subconsciously supported Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai's voice was a little distorted with excitement. Can you save Tianlan? I can't. Shenyuan Wushang shook his head. This is the most troublesome part. But I have a way. What way? Tell me. Qin Weibai's voice was a little shrill. Shenyuan Wushang hesitated and shook his head. Looking at Qin Weibai, he said with a wry smile. Sister-in-law, don't worry. I treated Big Brother's external injuries, so I know his situation very well. You really can't do anything about such an injury, but I have more than one way. That's why I'm hesitating. Because at present, I can think of different ways that will lead to different consequences. I've informed my family about this. Say something I can understand. Qin Weibai stared into Shenyuan Wushang's eyes. How can Tianlan get better now? 3 days. It should be enough. Shenyuan Wushang's tone was straightforward and calm. No words could be more powerful than this guarantee. Qin Weibai's body obviously relaxed for a moment, and she asked without hesitation, What does your family want? We don't need anything. Shenyuan Wushang laughed. Sister-in-law, I've been saying and doing since I came here. We are family, so I don't mind you being on guard against me. Because there are some things that I really can't say now, and I can't explain to you. But I really don't need you to do anything to help Emperor Dong's palace. Our family can't let anything happen to Big Brother. Qin Weibai looked at Shenyuan Wushang seriously and said seriously, Thank you. Shenyuan Wushang smiled and waved his hand. I'll take care of Big Brother. He laughed softly and said, I need peace. Remove all the equipment here and take away the medicine. Nalan Shuriying was obviously stunned and subconsciously looked at Qin Weibai. Remove the equipment and take away the medicine? Qin Weibai frowned slightly. What are you going to do? We've already begun to discuss countermeasures. I'll participate in the family meeting later. As for now, my father suggested that I communicate with sister-in-law. Shenyuan Wushang said. Communicate with me about what? Qin Weibai was a little surprised. It's not you. Shenyuan Wushang shook his head and then nodded. But it's also you. To be exact, it's you in Worry-Free Heights. Chapter 10:30. The desert stopped spreading. Yellow sand replaced the forest, covering an area of nearly 20 kilometers outside Jianghu city. It could be called a miracle in the daytime. The geological survey team of Beihai responded immediately. Wang Xianxia didn't even have time to deal with the affairs of Mount Dibing and Kanglin. He rushed here as fast as he could. All kinds of information from Kanglin kept coming. Wang Xianxia browsed through the messages one after another, feeling a little uneasy. The phone rang suddenly. Wang Xiangxiao's palm shook violently, and he answered the phone immediately. Patriarch, the location is confirmed. The voice of Liu Yang, the person in charge of Mount Dibing Air Force Base, sounded. 205 meters in front of you is the place where B-2-013 lost contact. B-2-013. To be precise, it was the number 013 helicopter of the 2nd Squadron of Team B of Mount Dibing Air Force Base. When Li Tianlan left Mount Dibing for Xianghu Airport, he took this helicopter. The helicopter suddenly lost contact when it approached Xianghu, and all the signals were completely cut off. Wang Xianxiao felt something was wrong when he got the news, so he quickly went down the mountain and rushed to the scene. He got the news of the desert in Xianghu 10 minutes ago when he was on his way here. Wang Xianxiao took the phone and nodded, then walked forward about 200 meters. Liu Yang's voice sounded again. It's about here, with an error of about 2 meters. Wang Xianxiao looked up at the sky. After the snow, the sun in Beihai was clear and bright, and the sky was blue. Under his feet was soft and dry yellow sand. There was nothing unusual here, and no helicopter wreckage could be seen. Wang Xianxiao was silent for a while, and suddenly waved his hand. A sharp sword intent suddenly appeared in the desert. The sword energy went deep into the ground, and in an instant, it soaked the desert for dozens of meters under his feet. Still, nothing was found. No, Wang Xianxiao said. Number 013 disappeared very suddenly. Its signal was completely cut off and disappeared in 0 7 seconds. This speed is faster than the reaction speed of the pilot, and it is faster than number 013's warning mechanism. It makes me feel as if it disappeared into thin air the moment it appeared here. Lu Yang's tone was a little strange. Wang Xianxia twitched the corner of his mouth, but the smile on his face was a little vague. Do you think this is the Bermuda Triangle? Unsolved mystery? Actually, I've always been very interested in these things, but that's not the main point. The most mysterious part of an unsolved mystery is the unknown. Right now, we don't know how 013 disappeared, but from the looks of it, the sudden appearance of this desert is directly related to the disappearance of 013. We can be sure that just yesterday, no, just a few hours or even an hour ago, this place was still a forest. It's impossible for this desert to appear, Lu Yang said softly. I think I know what's going on. Wang Xiangxiao's voice was calm. Do you have satellite images? It doesn't matter even if it's a little blurry. Lu Yang was silent for a moment. Wang Xiangxiao immediately realized something and shook his head helplessly. Of course, there were satellite images from before. The military low-altitude satellites of the Wang family of Beihai had been covering every corner of Beihai. However, with the end of the battle in Mount Dibing and Li Tianlan's departure from Beihai, Wang Xiangxiao had immediately ordered the military satellites of Beihai to capture the images of Kanglan City. What happened here was still a blank space for Beihai for the time being. There are no satellite images. But according to the power detection system we have set up near Mount Dibing and Shenzhou, Your Majesty, there was a burst of extremely terrifying power fluctuations in an instant. Because our detection system is not very perfect at present, the data we get is not very accurate. But roughly speaking, the power fluctuations that burst out at that moment seem to have exceeded the peak of our current record. Wang Xiangxiao's expression tightened. He knew very well what the peak of the power detection system that Beihai had recently developed meant. Because it had not been developed for long, some of the data had errors and could not even be detected. For example, the eternal sword above Mormons represented the peak of martial arts in the dark world for hundreds of years. Because of the overdraft of the master of Samsara Palace regardless of the cost, because of the ruthless full outburst, and because the chosen one's sword intent of Samsara were mixed together, it produced extremely complicated parameters that were difficult to measure accurately. The peak data recorded by the power detection system of Beihai was the data of Wang Tianzong's sword energy when he was in Mormons. That was the data when Wang Tianzong had just set foot on that supreme level after the breakthrough. The peak of the power that burst out at that moment just now surpassed that of Wang Tianzong in the period of Mormons? Li Tianlan broke through. How was that possible? Are you sure? Wang Xiangxiao asked. There's no problem with the data, but the power appeared for a very short time, probably less than 2 seconds, and suddenly disappeared. Lu Yang's voice was a little confused. Wang Xiangxiao held the phone and remained silent. Naturally, he did not think about the unsolved mystery. In his opinion, the helicopter was suddenly attacked when it flew over the sky. The strong sword intent or domain completely melted the helicopter in the flying state in an instant. Then Li Tianlan's full outburst. The extreme high temperature brought by the huge power evaporated everything in the forest in an instant, so the land became a desert. In theory, this could be explained. It was just a desert with a range of 20 kilometers. This sword covered an area of 20,000 meters. Was it so exaggerated? Was Li Tianlan not sure where the target was at that time? And how did Li Tianlan surpass Wang Tianzong in power? If he had broken through successfully, why did that power only appear for less than 2 seconds? Wang Xiangxiao remembered the conversation with Li Tianlan before. Li Tianlan said that he was not sure to deal with Wang Tianzong's sword energy doppelganger, but he was sure to destroy the entire Wang family of Beihai. Was it because of this sword? If so, this sword seemed to be a kind of explosive ability. Then what was Li Tianlan's current state? The key was where Li Tianlan was now. Wang Xiangxiao hesitated for a moment, but finally took out his mobile phone and dialed Qin Weibai's number. All the instruments were removed. All the drugs were taken away. After Naylan Shuriying's team left the huge bedroom on the top floor of the castle, the bedroom suddenly fell into silence. Li Tianlan was still lying silently on the bed, as if he had no vitality. Qin Weibai looked at Li Tianlan quietly, and then looked at Shenyuan Wushang. I don't understand what you mean, she said slowly. What does it have to do with me? It has a lot to do with it, but it's also something that can't be explained for the time being. Shenyuan Wushang said seriously. In my opinion, Big Brother's Samsara sword, he was tricked. Maybe it's not the real situation, but it doesn't matter. Under normal circumstances, even if Big Brother broke through and entered the so-called Supreme Realm, he would not be able to exert the power of that sword. He could not even imitate it. The reason why he was able to fight back successfully in that situation was because of Big Sister-in-law in Europe. But that was also the problem. Because of Big Sister-in-law, Big Brother did not die completely, but it was also because of her that his current injury became a little troublesome. Why is that? Qin Weibai was baffled by his words. Because she's special. Shenyuan Wushang paused, suddenly smiled playfully, and said meaningfully, Sister-in-law's situation is similar to time travel, or a parallel universe, or a rebirth. No matter what, under normal circumstances, since she is here, you shouldn't be here now. Well, let's not talk about this. The most important thing is that all this has happened now. He looked at Qin Weibai and said softly, Sister-in-law, do you really think this is a coincidence? Do you really think there is no human factor in it? There are so many people in the world, and every day different people welcome death or new life. Why can sister-in-law have a rebirth? Is it possible to be a coincidence? Qin Weibai's body suddenly shook. Human factor. Human factor? Human factor. What do you mean? She took a deep breath and asked in a low voice. Your existence is a very special form of existence that I can't understand. Shenyuan Wushang shook his head. To be exact, your existence is a paradox. Chapter 1031. How could there be so many coincidences? Shenyuan Wushang said something that Qin Weibai couldn't understand at all. He pressed his palm on Li Tianlan's chest. Wisps of dense white mist floated up from Li Tianlan's body. Shenyuan Wushang's expression was calm. He said softly, any incredible coincidence, in the final analysis, is a kind of inevitability. But most of the time, we can't understand it. A breeze suddenly blew. An airflow suddenly appeared in the bedroom with its doors and windows closed. Shenyuan Wushang's whole body began to glow. The clear light was hazy. The breeze blew away the clear light and gradually merged with the extremely thin white mist on Li Tianlan's body. Crack. The clear sound of bones cracking suddenly rang out. Qin Weibai suddenly opened her eyes wide. Shenyuan Wushang's hand on Li Tianlan's chest seemed to have lost all strength and support in an instant. The bones in his hand were almost shattered in an instant. The blood-stained white bones pierced through his flesh and skin. Crack. The dense sound of bones cracking, which was enough to make people's scalps numb, rang out. Shenyuan Wushang's head hung down without any warning. All the bones in his body seemed to have been shattered in an instant, and blood gushed out of his body. He had been sitting on the bed, but with the dense sound of bones cracking, his body lost its support in an instant and lay next to Li Tianlan in an extremely stiff posture. In Qin Weibai's sight, Shenyuan Wushang's expression and skin began to change at a speed visible to the naked eye. They turned blue and finally became a gray without any vitality. Blood flowed on his body. In this state, Shenyuan Wushang looked like a corpse that had been dead for an unknown period of time. Faint but shocking sounds of explosions kept ringing out in his body. Qin Weibai couldn't see what was happening in Shenyuan Wushang's body, but the constant vibrations seemed to be constantly tearing the strange things in his body. His heart, blood vessels, muscles, and bones seemed to be torn apart by that kind of power in the shortest time possible. Shenyuan Wushang's eyes were still open. His face was gray. His face, which used to look harmless to humans and animals, was now indescribably strange and ferocious. Qin Weibai had seen a lot of dead bodies. However, in the extremely quiet bedroom, the scene in front of her made her instinctively feel uncomfortable. Her scalp went numb, her body tensed up, and even her breathing seemed to carry a sense of nervousness and fear. Shenyuan Wushang didn't breathe or have a heartbeat. But his open eyes flashed with an incomparably clear trace of mockery and arrogance. A cold and gloomy voice sounded with disdain and contempt. Order! The white mist and hazy clear light completely enveloped him and Li Tianlan. Shenyuan Wushang didn't finish. Qin Weibai can't hear. In the depths of the colorful consciousness, a voice echoed. I am also an order. His voice seemed to spread throughout the entire space, echoing in the boundless world. It was quiet all around. Covered in blood, Shenyuan Wushang stood in place, staring blankly at the colorful world around him. His body was still lying beside Li Tianlan, but his own consciousness had already appeared in the depths of Qin Weibai's consciousness. The real Qin Weibai, or the depths of Gu Xianyan's consciousness. It was no longer a virtual doppelganger. Without that pair of glasses, Shenyuan Wushang didn't have the ability of virtual doppelganger and virtual intrusion. His current consciousness was his own consciousness. In other words, if he was trapped here, then Shenyuan Wushang in Emperor Dong's palace would die completely. This was undoubtedly a very serious consequence. But the problem was that Shenyuan Wushang seemed to have just noticed this problem. Blood continued to flow out of his body. Countless rays of light floated and shone around him. The moment he came to his senses, Shenyuan Wushang's expression suddenly changed. He looked as if he had seen a ghost, and he subconsciously blurted out a curse. The curse also echoed wildly between heaven and earth, like thunder all over the world. The light surged, indifferent and distant. Shenyuan Wushang's expression changed, and he didn't dare to move for a moment. Thousands of fur mud horses were galloping and roaring wildly in his heart. All his consciousness seemed to be completely frozen. There was only one thought left in his mind. Father, are you F*King trying to kill me? You are my father. Is this the F*King depth of Qin Weibai's consciousness? If he wasn't sure where he was, Shenyuan Wushang would even think that he had come to the wrong place. This is the F*King eternal furnace, Shenyuan Wushang murmured to himself. He hesitated for a long time, and finally took a tentative step forward. Puff! Blood suddenly burst out of his body. Shenyuan Wushang's body suddenly split open a huge wound that was so deep that bones could be seen. He looked down at the wound that almost spread to his heart, and wanted to cry but had no tears. My name is Wushang. I really want to go home. The reason was that the depth of Qin Weibai's consciousness was the same as Wang Tianzong's. Even if there was a difference, how big could the difference be? But the world in front of him was not the same concept as the depth of Wang Tianzong's consciousness. The depth of Wang Tianzong's consciousness was pitch black. It looked infinite, but also infinitely small. In fact, it was just a dot. But the depth of this colorful consciousness in front of him was completely like a boundless world. Where could he go to find Qin Weibai? Shenyuan Wushang took another step forward. The colorful light was slightly surging, and Shenyuan Wushang could not avoid it at all. Another wound was torn open on his body, dripping with blood. The clear light surged and enveloped his body, and the wounds on his body began to heal quickly. Shenyuan Wushang took a deep breath and continued to move forward. Another step. There was another wound. In the boundless light, Shenyuan Wushang kept moving forward. He had more and more wounds. Every time the wounds on his body reached a certain level, he would stop to heal himself and then move forward. Qin Weibai was still nowhere to be seen. His consciousness quickly sensed the exhaustion in his body. Time seemed to be meaningless. He didn't even know how long he had been here. He just kept healing and moving forward over and over again. Maybe it was 3 meters and 5 meters. Maybe it was 10,000 meters. Shenyuan Wushang, who was gradually numb, finally saw a mountain in front of him. In the constant light around him, the mountain was so different. The moment he saw the mountain seemed to see him. The light all over the world suddenly began to surge. The mountain began to tremble, but it was silent. The violent light all rushed over with the shaking of the mountain. There was light everywhere around him. The endless light instantly drowned Shenyuan Wushang. He was dripping with blood and covered with cuts and bruises. The body formed by Shenyuan Wushang's consciousness was completely torn apart again and then reassembled with difficulty. Shenyuan Wushang gritted his teeth. This seemingly harmless fat man had an indescribable determination at this time. His eyes were firmly fixed on the mountain in the distance. The mountain was trembling and shrinking. The light tore his body, again and again. After an unknown period of time, the multicolored radiance finally began to fade. The world became a nearly solidified ink painting again. In front of Shenyuan Wushang, the mountain disappeared. Or rather, the mountain shrank countless times. It became a delicate and beautiful but incomparably huge crown, slowly floating not far from Shenyuan Wushang. It was so clear, so real, so majestic and so beautiful. The whole world seemed to be completely dark. Only the crown in front of him was the only real thing. Real? Shenyuan Wushang's eyes were dazed. This is... He looked at the crown in front of him and was silent for a long time. Heh. His consciousness had been exhausted to the extreme. He smiled in a trance. I see. Chapter 1032. Shenyuan Wushang's somewhat absent-minded voice reverberated in the depths of his colorful consciousness. Voices of, "So that's how it is," could be heard everywhere, like the whispers of heaven and earth. The huge crown floating in front of him glowed, layer upon layer of light spreading in all directions. Shenyuan Wushang stared blankly at the scene in front of him. Some vague images began to appear in his mind, but he couldn't remember them. The vague memories seemed to be from a very distant time ago, but also seemed to be from just a second ago. The images twisted as they appeared, and then quickly faded away. Shenyuan Wushang wasn't sure if he had ever seen the crown in front of him. It was so gorgeous and exquisite, and so dignified and graceful. Countless illusory lights wove it together, weaving it into reality. The scene in front of him seemed familiar, but for a moment Shenyuan Wushang didn't know what the crown meant. The light spread. Shenyuan Wushang continued forward. The distance between them continued to shrink. The crown seemed to be offended, and colorful light instantly gushed out. This time, the boundless light seemed to have a mind of its own. It was countless times more terrifying than what Shenyuan Wushang had just experienced. The clear, colorful light rushed through Shenyuan Wushang's body, instantly shattering the clear light covering his body. Countless pieces of his flesh were instantly torn to shreds. Shenyuan Wushang's face was deathly pale. He clenched his teeth and stubbornly moved forward in the sky full of light. He had long since run out of options. He had no way out of here before he saw the person he wanted to see. Large pieces of flesh fell off in the light. Blood that was so red that it was dazzling to the eyes flowed unscrupulously. He moved forward. Countless pieces of flesh fell off his body. Shenyuan Wushang's whole body was covered in countless wounds, and his bones were visible. His limbs, chest, abdomen, and head. Pieces of flesh were constantly torn off. Shenyuan Wushang disappeared in the light. Only a skeleton was left, persevering as it slowly walked forward. The red blood disappeared. Drops of golden liquid flowed out of the skeleton's bones. The golden blood turned into light, merging with the colorful light of the crown. The crown clearly sensed something, and the light around it suddenly stopped. The skeleton took the last step. He reached out, as if to touch the crown in front of him. The crown floated back for an instant. In the next second, countless images instantly enveloped the skeleton. It was like an abyss. All that was left of Shenyuan Wushang was his skeleton. An incomparably majestic yet incomparably gloomy voice echoed between heaven and earth. He failed. But there is still a chance. Can you afford to wait? Who knows how long it will take? Time is meaningless. I'll go. What can we do? Maybe I can't do anything, but at least I can be with him. You think this is a good thing? How is he now? It's hard to say. I can't find him. Based on his current state, he might have entered the Order Realm or fallen into the Shadow Realm. Perhaps. In short, none of the possibilities are what we want. But it's you, not me. What do you want? Whether it's real or illusory, I just want to be with him. Say no more. Brother, send us to Miracle City. Falling. Countless rays of light weaved into a bottomless abyss. The images were like a deep well that devoured all of Shenyuan Wushang's consciousness. From now on, I'm Gu Xianyan. Welcome to Kunlun City. Welcome to Phoenix Pavilion. As clear as water, as pure as snow, as ethereal as wind, as cold as fog, she is an outstanding beauty. This woman will bring chaos to the world. Remember this man. Li Tianlan? This is my goal. Stay by his side. Xian Yan greets your highness. Ha! The first beauty of Jianghu state deserves this title. Gu Xianyan leaves Kunlun City today. That's it. You have me completely. Really? Why don't you admit it? I don't know. You know it. Stop it. Don't force me. I'm pregnant. You're so perfunctory in naming your child. I hate it. Who dares to fight with me? It hurts. Why don't you fight back? I'm sorry. Shenyuan Wushang's consciousness fell into a snowstorm. Kill my man. It's us. Don't you think I look like a bird? The multicolored light and the multicolored sword light suddenly overlapped. I'll find him and take this world with me. All of you. Die with him. I want to be with him. From today on, you're called Gu Xianyan. I'm Qin Wei Bai. But I'm Qin Wei Bai. I'm the future. I'm the past. Let me go, you bitch. No, I won't let you go. Li Tianlon. Bastard. The almost eternal sword light pierced through the sky, piercing through the supreme monument of martial arts of this era. It's all over. The colorful sword light dissipated instantly. All the light around disappeared. Extreme darkness and silence enveloped everything. Shenyuan Wushang kept falling. His speed kept increasing. But there was always darkness and silence around him. Shenyuan Wushang, who was only a skeleton, couldn't even hear his own heartbeat and blood flow. The continuous fall seemed to become endless eternity. It was long and short. Everything lost its meaning. His consciousness gradually blurred, and his thoughts gradually solidified. The darkness around him was so real that it seemed to merge with him. Shenyuan Wushang struggled subconsciously. Boundless light suddenly shone brightly. The wind and snow filled the sky. The eternal sword light suddenly lit up in the wind and snow that filled the sky. The wind and snow were flying, and huge waves were surging. The sword light was like a rainbow, tearing the world apart. The whole world seemed to be full of chaotic and crazy sword light, with extreme silence and destruction. The corpses of the Wang family of Beihai were everywhere. The weapon fragments with empty ammunition covered the whole battlefield. The land was sunken, and the stage of formidable person was torn apart. The corpses spread all the way from afar. Shenyuan Wushang's sight seemed to cross the distance and fell on Xiangzhou city not far away. The entire Xiangzhou city had been completely turned into ruins. Countless corpses were scattered on every street and alley. The flag of the Beihai Corps had been broken. The entire Beihai Corps seemed to have been completely annihilated, destroyed along with Xiangzhou city. The ruins of Mount Dibing were about to disappear. The violent waves of Beihai surged over and was about to cover everything that used to be Mount Dibing. The land turned into the sea. A quiet, almost old figure stood on the surface of the sea. Wisps of sword energy kept flowing out of his body and turned into the craziest and most silent sword light. The sword light drove the space, and the whole world seemed to undulate with his sword light. Shenyuan Wushang, who was completely a skeleton, looked at the man above the sea. This was clearly a man who had just entered middle age. He looked at most 40 years old. He did not look old at all. On the contrary, he was very handsome. He seemed to have inherited his mother's genes. Even in middle age, his appearance could still be described as handsome. Like the breeze at dawn, the moonlight at night, and the sunset at dusk, he was ethereal and dreamy. Just from his appearance, he was almost a perfect man without any flaws. But he was simply too quiet. That kind of quiet was indifferent and lonely, as if he had lost interest in everything in the world. For a moment, Shenyuan Wushang couldn't figure out how much pain and despair he had suffered in his life to become the current state step by step. The moment he saw him, he had already seen a touch of numb old age and fatigue under his perfect appearance. He stood quietly on the sea. The sword energy and heaven and earth shook together. Behind him was a group of densely packed figures also floating in the air. There were Chinese, Europeans, Americans, and even quite a few black people. There were people of all races. They floated neatly behind the man, looking at him with eyes full of fanaticism and worship that were almost irrational. The man, who was so quiet that he seemed to have lost his soul, turned a blind eye to the countless eyes behind him. Strong wind, huge waves, flying snow. He stood in the air and slowly moved forward. The sword energy began to condense, and his dead eyes became more and more determined. "Why are you so persistent, Your Majesty?" A helpless voice rang out. Less than a few hundred meters away from the man, there was a huge stone carved with countless names floating on the sea. A few figures were standing on it. An extremely ordinary-looking figure stood at the forefront of the huge stone.
Behind him was a seriously injured young man and a woman whose age was unknown and whose whole body was integrated with some kind of metal.
In the vast Beihai, the Wang family of Beihai that had stood at the peak of the dark world for hundreds of years. When everything ended, there was only the mother and son left. At the end of the road, the young man, who looked very ordinary both in appearance and temperament, said in a sincere voice, "The cause of the past is the effect of today. The Wang family of Beihai has been completely destroyed and vanished. Everything has come to an end. Why are you so ruthless, Your Majesty?" Completely destroyed? Disappear into thin air? The man, whose appearance, temperament, and every movement was perfect, sneered. No, there are still 2 people alive. When they die, the so-called Wang family of Beihai will truly vanish. Li Dongqing, I swear if I can survive today, I will destroy the sword dynasty I built. I will make them die without descendants. On the huge stone, the seriously injured man standing behind the ordinary young man gritted his teeth and roared word by word. His tone was extremely sad and indignant. Almost everyone in the dark world knew that when President Wang Jingxin of Jianghu State retired, the Wang family of Beihai would be destroyed. Beihai had been preparing for a life-and-death battle with the Sword Dynasty a few years ago. In recent years, Beihai had been crazily cultivating experts and upgrading various weapon systems. All the financial resources were invested in it at all costs. All kinds of weapon systems were laid from Mount Dibing to Xianxia City. The scale of the Beihai Corps was constantly expanding. All of this was for today. It was November 1st in Jianghu State time. Just yesterday, October 31st, the election of Jianghu State officially ended. Wang Jingxin resigned as president. Less than 2 hours later, Chen Xiaobei's eyes lit up. The Sword Dynasty soldiers marched into Beihai. The soldiers arrived at the city. Xianxia was already in ruins. Needless to say, the other major sword-holding families outside Xianxia were almost completely destroyed. The situation of each city would only be worse than that of Xianxia, not better. The pride that the Wang family of Beihai had maintained for hundreds of years was almost torn apart today. As the center of the battlefield, Xianxia, sword god Li Dongqing landed in Xianxia alone. He killed nearly half of the elites of the Beihai Corps and destroyed countless weapon systems. With countless weapon systems, the sword light was monstrous. Finally, he climbed Mount Dibing alone. It was impossible to stop and resist. But when a person could really be invincible to a certain extent, all the resistance became a complete joke in his eyes. Countless lineal descendants of the Wang family of Beihai died in the battle on Mount Dibing. In the entire Beihai, only Wang Haotian, summer solstice, and the stone of formidable person fell to the sea after the stage of formidable person was broken. If it weren't for this ordinary man who suddenly appeared in front of him and blocked Li Dongqing's sword, no one in Beihai would have survived. Get out of the way, Li Dongqing said slowly. The man in front of him, who protected the last vitality of the Wang family of Beihai, didn't seem to have a high realm. He seemed to be at the peak of the invincible realm, but he blocked his sword light. He hoped that such a talent could stay for the Sword Dynasty. Your strength is good. You can join the Sword Dynasty. In the future, the Sword Dynasty will have a place. Don't be a busybody, Li Dongqing said calmly. I'm very willing to join the Sword Dynasty. I'm actually a painter. If I can be an art teacher in the Sword Dynasty, I think it's actually pretty good, but... The ordinary man laughed. I'm not a busybody, Your Majesty. This is my family business. Family business, understand? Li Dongqing was silent for a while. I don't understand, he said slowly. I have no family business, and I don't have a home. No family business, no home. The ordinary man's heart suddenly sank. Li Dongqing's voice was very soft, but he knew very well what this sentence meant. The blood feud was absolutely irreconcilable, and they would not stop until one of them died. He laughed bitterly. Do you know what it's like to lose your family? Li Dongqing suddenly asked. His voice was a little soft. The seemingly ordinary man thought for a while and asked, I killed my biological father with my own hands. Does that count? Li Dongqing. My master also killed his biological father with his own hands. Does that count? Li Dongqing. If it counts. The young man whispered, this feeling is actually very cool, but also very empty.
It seems that all the goals of struggle disappeared the moment I killed him, and there is no direction in life.
He looked into Li Dongqing's eyes. It's really cool, but after a moment of coolness, there is only endless emptiness. It's really not a good feeling.
Your Majesty, now that you have completely destroyed the Wang family of Beihai, I feel the same as I did at that time.
The only goal of living is to kill your father? Li Dongqing raised his eyebrows.
Destroying the Wang family of Beihai had always been his goal, and it was even the only meaning of his life.
Yes.
The ordinary man was silent for a while and whispered, "At least I used to be."
Li Dongqing narrowed his eyes and suddenly asked, "What's your name?" Shenyuan Samsara.
The ordinary man laughed.
Tianjue, Shenyuan Samsara of the War God realm. Shenyuan Wuxiang. Shenyuan Wuxiang's consciousness suddenly fluctuated for a moment. The light enveloped his body, but it did not hurt him. Instead, it pushed him forward. Shenyuan Wuxiang's body staggered forward and appeared directly on the sea. In an instant, countless eyes suddenly gathered on Shenyuan Wuxiang. Li Dongqing raised his eyebrows slightly, looking at the fat man who suddenly appeared, a little puzzled. At that moment, he did not even know how the man appeared. Shenyuan Samsara, who had just finished introducing himself, was obviously stunned.
He looked at the fat man with an incredulous expression, and then it gradually turned into a touch of mockery.
Hey, isn't this His Highness the Ninth Prince? What a rare guest.
The corners of his mouth rose slightly, and the smile spread, but the sharpness in his tone suddenly became sharp.
What are you doing here? Shenyuan Wuxiang seemed a little embarrassed, but then he calmed down and subconsciously moved closer to Li Dongqing, finally standing next to him. During the whole process, Li Dongqing did not guard against him at all and let him come closer. Wisps of clear light lit up on Shenyuan Wuxiang's body, and then it enveloped Li Dongqing's body. In an instant, Li Dongqing's sword qi became more and more stable, and his consumed physical strength rose wildly. In an instant, he returned to his peak state. You still dare to fight? Shenyuan Wuxiang, are you tired of living? Shenyuan Samsara's voice suddenly became incomparably sinister. Shenyuan Wuxiang looked at him expressionlessly. Do you really want to die? Don't put on airs with me, Ninth Prince. This isn't the space-time corridor. Indeed, this isn't the space-time corridor, but it seems like you can't deal with me. Do you want Master to send someone else? Or Master himself?
If I can die under his sword, I'll be very honored, but do you really want war so much?
This prince here represents the space-time corridor. Come, try and touch me. Shenyuan Samsara gritted his teeth. Scoundrel! We're not enemies. It's just a coincidence that I'm here. I'm not a terrorist, and I have no interest in this place. I'm only here to solve a problem. It's just that there's an accident now, so I see this face. Solve a problem? Shenyuan Samsara raised his eyebrows. Something happened to His Majesty? Shenyuan Wuxiang snorted coldly and began to heal the injuries of everyone from the Sword Dynasty behind Li Dongqing. He didn't need to worry about anything here. Even if something went wrong, it was the War God's realm's problem. What did it have to do with him? Isn't it because of Master? My big brother touched the sword energy that Master left behind. F***ck. Shenyuan Samsara was dumbfounded. Are you kidding me? Anyway, it's a bit complicated. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't be here. Shenyuan Wuxiang shook his head. From the space-time corridor to the War God's realm, the difficulty wasn't the distance. Under normal circumstances, they could indeed contact each other, but it was impossible for them to meet in the North Sea. If it wasn't for Qin Weibai's consciousness space being too magical, he wouldn't be here at all. Tisk. Shenyuan Samsara's tone was a bit strange. That His Majesty must be having a headache now. He glanced at Li Dongqing, who was frowning. At present, in terms of combat power, this person is stronger than the one next to him, his father, but he obviously didn't feel anything. So, how did His Majesty do it? I had an accident here. Shenyuan Wuxiang was still calm and said thoughtfully, it's not necessarily a headache. Maybe it's an opportunity. But when the time comes, we should ask Master or Master's wife for help. That's no problem. Xianxia Samsara solemnly promised without any hesitation. If you need anything, just say it. There's no need to be stingy in this regard. But when the time comes, just be prepared to bleed a lot. Xianxia Wuxiang nodded and fell silent. Xianxia Samsara also fell silent. The two looked at each other for a moment. Xianxia Samsara took the initiative to say, "Why aren't you leaving?" "I want to leave too." Xianxia Wuxiang's expression was a bit tragic. "But how? What do you mean?" Xianxia Samsara narrowed his eyes. "I don't know." Xianxia Wuxiang shook his head. "No, I know, but I forgot." Xianxia Samsara took a deep look at him and nodded. "I understand. What do you say here?" The little guy wants to fight with his life on the line. He might not be his match here. Xianxia Wuxiang suddenly smiled somewhat playfully. He's already at that level. There are some things I should be able to say. In fact, the existence of the North Sea is still meaningful. I came here to protect the North Sea and to protect Li Dongqing. His mentality has been problematic for a long time. The last two people in the North Sea must stay. This can be regarded as a bit of Li Dongqing's obsession. He's completely crazy now. If he really destroys the North Sea, he won't have the motivation to live. When the time comes, his only choice is to self-destruct. If he really destroys himself, my master and his majesty in the imperial palace will be heartbroken. So I came here. Just like how we appeared beside his majesty, we are all guides. You've worked hard. Xianxia Wuxiang nodded with a gratified expression. Xianxia Samsara felt a little strange. No matter how he thought about it, it didn't seem right. What does this expression mean? Ha ha. Xianxia Wuxiang smiled without saying anything. Li Dongqing's potential had already been affirmed. Because of the existence of his parents, he didn't need to be explained in any aspect. If Li Dongqing continued to grow, he would at least be a killing god at his peak. Because of his parents, it was unknown whether Li Dongqing would stay here when the time came. Xianxia Wuxiang now really felt like someone else was helping his family cultivate a talent. Let's start the show. Xianxia Wuxiang smiled. Let's see how to protect the North Sea and how to convince this little guy. Who is it? Li Dongqing's voice suddenly sounded. He didn't feel anything strange. While Xianxia Wuxiang and Xianxia Samsara were chatting, everything was speeding up. Although the two had said a lot, in the eyes of everyone else, it was less than a second. Feeling the recovery of his strength, Li Dongqing's tone seemed to have become somewhat gentle. Him. Xianxia Samsara's voice sounded. You can call him uncle. He's father's friend. Li Dongqing suddenly narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? It's literally what I mean. Xianxia Samsara shook his head. Your Majesty, there are a lot of things that you don't understand now. I should be able to tell you some of them now. In fact, there is no such thing as... The corner of Xianxia Samsara's mouth was still moving, but all his voice suddenly disappeared in an instant. Li Dongqing's eyes flashed with doubt. In the next second, Xianxia Samsara's face suddenly changed. His face quickly turned pale. The moment he suddenly closed his mouth, a wound suddenly appeared between his eyebrows. A scarlet drop of blood that reflected almost all the light flowed directly from between his eyebrows. Xianxia Wuxiang's face suddenly changed. He subconsciously waved his hand, and a clear light enveloped Xianxia Samsara, quickly healing his injury. What's going on? Li Dongqing raised his eyebrows inexplicably. That's about it. Xianxia Samsara smiled bitterly. I want to tell you something, but I can't say it. It's not that I don't want to say it, but even if I say it, you can't hear it. Even if I write it on paper, you can't see it. Li Dongqing fell silent. At that moment, he could tell whether Xianxia Samsara was pretending or not. Xianxia Samsara obviously wanted to say something and said something. The fat man next to him could obviously hear it, but he couldn't. And the shape of Xianxia Samsara's mouth was also distorted in an instant. He glanced at Xianxia Wuxiang. I can't say it either. Xianxia Wuxiang shook his head. Only when I reach the peak level can I hear the voice. But he's right. I'm indeed father's friend. I saw some interesting scenes. North Sea's Mount Dibbing was cut open by a sword, right? I've been there, so I should know. As for the current North Sea, no one cares whether these two people are killed or not, but it doesn't matter. Father is now. All the voices disappeared in an instant. At this moment, Li Dongqing clearly felt an abrupt but incomparably dense killing intent suddenly form around him. However, before that killing intent could envelop Shenyuan Wuxiang, a seven-colored light instantly enveloped his body. Shenyuan Wuxiang's figure quickly disappeared. Darkness, light, and countless chaotic scenes constantly flashed. Blood. Flesh splattered. Shenyuan Wuxiang became a skeleton again.
His skeleton was covered in dense cracks, and countless amounts of golden liquid flowed out little by little from the cracks of his bones.
The messy light stabilized again. The crown appeared in Shenyuan Wuxiang's sight once again. The crown was slowly shrinking. Shenyuan Wuxiang froze on the spot.
After a long silence, he seemed to understand something. He raised his hand and waved it gently. His weak consciousness directly formed a very strange experimental platform in front of him. There was a very small tube on the experimental platform. A drop of water flowed out of the tube and eventually became a bubble. Her consciousness became clear from blurry. It was as if there were countless rays of light constantly moving away and then drawing closer. The moment her consciousness appeared, she didn't know where she was or who she was. It was as if she had just woken up after thousands of years of sleep. She was confused, and slow. She felt that she was walking forward. Walking in the pitch-black wilderness, there was not a single trace of light. Some pictures gradually appeared in her mind, as if different people were saying different things. Gu Xianyan, Qin Wei Bai, Li Tianlan, Dongqing Huangtu, Gu Xingyun, Shenyuan, Li Dongqing. All the experiences seemed to be completely connected, but in no order. The pictures began to become clear, forming different things one after another, but the order became more and more chaotic. She didn't know which thing happened first, and which thing happened later. She began to think about the order, and then she thought about the time. One thing after another, in an utterly confused sequence, led to different results. But no matter how it developed, people were always the most vivid in her memory. So what was the meaning of time and order? She moved cautiously in the darkness without any light, allowing countless images to flash through her mind. After a long time, she suddenly stopped for a moment and began to think about a very important question. Who am I? There seemed to be a lot of people in her memory. But where was the me in her memory? Was it Gu Xianyan? Was it Qin Wei Bai? Was it Li Tianlan? Was it Dongqing Huangtu? Was it... Who am I? There seemed to be no place for her in all the memories. She suddenly felt a little irritable and angry. There was a little light in the distance. The light was getting bigger and more obvious, rushing toward her at an extreme speed. There seemed to be a figure flashing in the light, getting closer and closer to her. She saw an illusory vague shadow that seemed to dissipate at any time, coming toward her with endless light. She instinctively wanted to fight back. At the moment when she thought about it, countless lights completely enveloped the shadow. The shadow became more and more illusory, but it kept moving forward. She became more and more annoyed. She had just woken up, and her mood was extremely unstable. She instinctively wanted to control the light to kill the other party. A speck of golden light suddenly appeared in the colorful light. The moment the golden light and the light completely merged, she suddenly felt an unparalleled familiarity. The shadow seemed to appear beside her in an instant. The familiar feeling became clearer and clearer. She watched the other party stretch out his palm toward her. So she took a step back. The light under her control instantly shrouded her. The faint shadow disappeared. She herself was wrapped in endless light as she continued to fall. Until the deepest part of nothingness. The eternal silence passed slowly, as if it was meaningless. The sound of the slight collision of machinery suddenly sounded. She seemed to open her eyes from a deep sleep. There was darkness in front of her. The extreme darkness was slowly thinning. A little hazy and pure clear light lit up. She blinked, and the memory in her mind was very clear. It was the moment when Shenyuan blade pierced Wang Tianzong's chest. She took a step forward in a daze, subconsciously trying to get close to the clear light in the darkness. The clear light gradually became clear, and it seemed to be a transparent bubble that looked very big but very small. The bubbles spread all the way from a distance, and there were more and more of them. She hesitated and slowly walked in the direction where the bubbles drifted from. There were more and more clear lights, and the surroundings became brighter and brighter. A shining test bench gradually appeared in front of her. The test bench seemed to be operating by itself. She hesitated for a moment and continued to move forward. The test bench became clearer and clearer. The test bench, shining with bronze luster, looked old and mottled, with a strong breath of time. In front of the test bench, there was an illusory shadow that seemed to disappear completely at any time. The shadow was so illusory that she could not see its facial features or even its complete body. It kept busy in front of the test bench, and one bubble after another flew out of the test bench. She looked at it for a long time and then said softly, "Okay. Okay." The shadow responded softly. In the dark space, Xianxia Wuxiang saw the crown getting closer and closer to him, and finally stopped in front of the test bench. Different perspectives. Different scenes. In the eyes of the crown, the skeleton in front of him was just a shadow that would disappear at any time. In the eyes of the skeleton, the Qin Wei Bai he wanted to find was just this crown. What was the essence? It was what all of them had been pursuing.
"What are you doing?"
In the darkness, she looked at the test bench and the shadow curiously and asked softly.
"Waiting."
The shadow laughed softly.
The countless bubbles around seemed to disappear completely. Only the test bench continued to be busy.
A drop of liquid flowed out of the test bench, and then gradually expanded. Qin Wei Bai seemed to want to ask something, but when she saw the water drop getting bigger and bigger, she subconsciously stopped asking and just focused on the drop of water that was getting bigger and bigger. The drop of water seemed to be filled with countless airflows, and began to expand, becoming rounder and more perfect.
Infinite density.
In silence, the shadow stared at the drop of water in front of him and said softly, "It's expanding, and its density is beginning to become thinner."
Countless airflows gradually turned into starry light spots.
The light spots began to merge into the drop of water little by little. Electrons, photons, neutrinos. The shadow continued to speak, and all kinds of light continued to merge into it. The drop of water began to expand faster, became the size of a fingernail, and then further spread.
Its shape seemed to become rounder and rounder, and finally became a bubble again.
There were more and more different lights.
The shadow's voice also became more and more erratic. Atoms, nuclei, molecules. Countless lights joined the drop of water again. The drop of water expanded to the size of a palm. She watched and listened carefully. The drop of water kept expanding, becoming the size of a head, a house, and a tall building. It expanded infinitely, covering the whole world. It was getting faster and faster. Qin Wei Bai didn't even know where the bubble had spread to. She and the shadow were completely wrapped in the bubble, and the transparent arc of the bubble had disappeared in the distance. But her instinct told her that the bubble was still expanding infinitely. "There are more and more particles." The shadow's voice was a little dreamy. The starry light spots appeared around Qin Wei Bai again. They hovered in different places. They were unimaginably big in Qin Wei Bai's eyes. But in this expanding bubble, it seemed incomparably small, like a speck of dust. The starry light spots became more and more numerous. Qin Wei Bai's eyes were bright. The bubble suddenly became clear. All the edges seemed to begin to shrink and collapse. In her sight, the bright starry spots began to die out one by one.
"Say," the shadow whispered, "if these tiny lights are conscious, how desperate must they be now?"
His voice was very soft, but with absolute cruelty. Qin Wei Bai looked at it blankly and didn't speak.
The infinitely large bubble shrank back at a very fast speed. Bang!
The bubble turned into a drop of water. The drop of water suddenly exploded again. There was nothingness. Most of the starry light spots disappeared. Only a limited number of light spots were still shining.
Qin Wei Bai quietly looked at those tenacious light spots, and suddenly there was a sincere joy and hope in her heart. The water droplets that exploded into nothingness turned into the most basic particles. The basic particles began to combine and turned into water droplets again. The water droplets turned into bubbles again and began to expand infinitely again. The shadow watched all this quietly, and the whole shadow exuded a kind of desolation that was close to despair.
"Is it interesting?" he asked softly. Qin Wei Bai bit her lip tightly and shook her head subconsciously. She didn't find it interesting. She only felt a kind of unprecedented fear. The bubble shrank wildly and exploded again. In the nothingness, there were still a few shining light spots. But Qin Weibai was not sure if these light spots were the ones she had seen earlier. Water droplets, bubbles, expansion, contraction, explosion. It was a never-ending cycle. In this dark space, the constant repetition seemed to be the true eternity. Can you understand it? The shadow asked softly. Qin Weibai shook her head. Do you find it familiar? The shadow asked again. Qin Weibai wanted to shake her head, but all her movements stopped where she was. She did not shake her head or nod. Instead, she fell silent. I understand. Shenyuan Wushang sighed softly. In fact, there was no need for communication. There was never a need for communication. He was sure of Qin Weibai's current state and understood the treatment plan for Li Tianlan. The bubbles exploded and expanded, over and over again, endlessly repeating the cycle. What do you want to do here? Qin Weibai asked. The main purpose of my coming here is to do this experiment and determine whether I can understand it or not. Now that he had gotten the answer, whether Qin Weibai understood it or not, his trip was worthwhile. Shenyuan Wushang smiled and said, I should go. Who is it? Qin Weibai stared at the test bench in front of her and asked cautiously. Leave the test bench here. Shenyuan Wushang smiled and said, I can study it when I'm bored. Who is it? Shenyuan Wushang asked again. Shenyuan Wushang murmured in a low voice. Or we are just a group of poor wretches struggling in despair to survive. His shadow floated up gently and went further and further away. The test bench was still working. The bubble expanded infinitely and turned into a world. Shenyuan Wushang's murmur echoed between heaven and earth. Life is the greatest illusion. 10,000-word chapter. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.